and hopefully... Oh! Wow.
Don't do that on the
moon
air.
yeah. Moon is looking good. Let me bring it up here. My worthless arrow on okay, let's bring it
I
up.
gotta check that out.
Let's bring it up. There we go. And man, oh man, is it looking good down there. Wow. We are close. And I'm pretty sure that's not the 70 millimeter. Okay, let me switch that up. Hey, what's going on, everybody joining us? We are just getting started. All kinds of started. I think this is you. Let me get rid of you. Okay, let's brighten this up so we can take a peek in there. All right. So good day to you, sir.
Good day. How are you?
I am good. I am good. Are we ready? Are we ready to do this?
I thought we were.
I know. I'm still on a high because of the Eagles win. Yep, 10-1. Jeez, who would ever thought?
Well, I don't know.
I know you're not Mr. Football, are you?
I'm not actually. No, I'm not Mr. Wrestling. I'm not Mr. Football. I'm not even freaking curling.
Well, the one I have to do because it's kind of an employer, but the other one is just for pure enjoyment. So, here we are. Everybody join us. How many? Oh, wow, we got 22 people in already. Welcome, welcome. We're just waiting for more people to get in here with us. So enjoy looking at the moon in the meantime. And we'll probably take breaks here and there where we can stop and get some drinks and whatnot because it's going to be probably at least 10:30 until we're done. So, and we're looking. It's already 6 o'clock right now. So. So Mark.
Yes, sir.
What
is going on? Hey, I want to thank you for your help this afternoon. Keith helped me implement a new sound system in the John Zach Memorial Observatory for the Sky Tour live stream.
And it sounded awesome.
It did. It sounded great. And I also, by the way, I have a new music set up now in there that I implemented myself. So that as I play music, I actually can, crossfade to tracks as they end. One will start to fade away as the other fades in. It's really nice. I got a far more professional
You know what? I tried that at one point, because sometimes I have the turntables hooked up to the feed. Every once in a while we'll have a little party here at P&K. Like if it's like around Christmas or New Year's or something, I'll just throw a copyright to the breeze and we'll do a stream where we're just jamming out, and then I'll delete the stream afterward. But which we'll probably be doing this year around Christmas, I think, because I'm not going to be around New Year's because somebody suckered me into DJing this year, so I'm going to have to go do that. But yeah, we'll probably do it as like a little Christmas thing, since the moon will be up at that time, so it'll be nice. But yeah, I tried doing that on the stream at one point, and I just found it was just too much.
Well, it does it. It's doing it automatically.
Oh, does it? Okay, so you don't have to actually sit there and crossfade.
No. It's cross. Yeah. No, a crossfade is not like there's a fade and there's a crossfade. What's a crossfade? A crossfade is when the music starts to fade out as the other music's fading in, and you can determine that interval. Right. That fade out and fade in, they overlap each other too. Well, see, so one's fading out
as the other one's coming in. Going across from one deck to the other.
Right, and how quick you go from one side to the other, for instance. So if you think of it that way, determines the time of the crossfade. And I'm doing one for like 3 seconds. And I checked that out, and man, it sounds really nice. So I'm also, as we speak, I'm actually downloading additional music to add to the library.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
but yeah, so anyway.
Yeah, let's pick up on a conversation we started having last night about moon dust. I thought that was kind of interesting. And we were talking about the makeup, and you did pose a question to the people last night, and we'll do that in a little bit so we get some time for people to get in.
Sure.
That were here last night and whatnot. But
Roger that.
Let's talk about the makeup of moon dust.
Okay.
And we were doing it in relation to Earth, like the makeup of Earth compared to the makeup of the moon.
Sure.
Go for that, because I would like to hear more about that personally.
Go for Papa Palpatine.
Go for
Papa Palpatine. Remember that? Yeah. So we talked about moon dust, and the reason we were talking about it, I don't know why we got on the topic, but I think it was because I had to open my mouth and say how the near side of the moon is actually a thinner crust than the far side, and that the moon is actually oblate and the center of mass of the moon is not in the center of the moon. It's actually skewed toward the backside. Now, that's odd, but you could figure that as these molten planets are forming, you could think that, well, perhaps as they cool, perhaps some of the heavier elements get stuck on one side more than the other, and that's true. It can happen. Depends how many times the moon got struck and went molten fully, like the Earth had. The Earth during the era of bombardment, well over 3 billion years ago, there was a time when the Earth was, hard shell, on the surface, and then sent into molten status again as large impactors hit the Earth. That happened a few times, obviously, and then as the Earth finally cooled and as the solar system finally started to clear all these additional objects that were within it, these additional errant objects like asteroids that didn't really find an orbital home yet. The Earth finally got a chance to cool, and the Moon did the same thing. But the trouble is, as the Moon cooled and the Earth cooled, they still affected each other. Okay, when the Earth was molten or semi-molten, and the Moon was semi-molten, impactors hitting the Moon, for instance, would strike the Moon and throw stuff up into the area around the Moon. On the Earth, we call it today. We call it, a meteorite impact would send stuff into the atmosphere. On the Moon,
this is something I often wondered, and I meant to ask you this a while ago, but it totally slipped my mind. Is it possible say some of these small craters that are on the Moon have been caused by, say, re-entry and attracting to the gravity of the Moon? Like, say you have a giant impact, all right, say Tycho, for instance.
Yes.
And this thing comes in and breaks up and shoots back out into space, a whole bunch of debris. Is it possible that these stones then come back in and create a bunch of little teeny craters, like the little ones that we see all over the place?
Those are called secondary. Those are secondary impacts. Yep. And we do see that. And we see that quite a bit, actually, on the Moon. And now, don't confuse that these secondary impacts with satellite craters. There are satellite craters that are named satellite craters on the Moon, and like, for instance, if you see one particular crater, you might then see that you have a crater with the same name with a capital A next to it, a crater with the same name with a capital B, and so forth, A, B, C, D. Those are called satellite craters. That doesn't necessarily mean that they formed at the same time from the same event. What that means is, and I'll get to your question directly, that means that those are areas within that region that have been identified with that particular crater. So they're given that name. They're given the name of the main crater and then given a designator. So if you look up satellite crater in Google, you'll see what I'm talking about.
And Deep House had a question on there. So, can those structures, I put structures in quotes for this one, and the impacts be explained? And I'm guessing this is where the part of the show where we go into the complex crater explanation.
Well, maybe if that's where he's going. It doesn't. I'm not sure if that's actually where he's going with the question. Maybe he is.
Well, he's calling them structures, which I'm guessing if it's anything that we're showing currently, it would be the complex crater, that we're on screen. So, explain the difference between complex craters and regular craters. Some of them that they say are smoothed out craters, and why there's some of them are so smooth in the middle. Because we had this question on the video from last night as well.
Well, if you look at what we see on the screen now, all right. My thing has changed now. Actually, if you could, I don't know if you can share your screen, because if you could share your screen, then I could see what you see live, and then I'll be able to speak to what I see on the screen at the same time. And then 30 seconds later, it'll make sense.
Yeah, let me find out here.
Go to call.
See how much
share screens.
Yeah, I know.
You're thinking of your bandwidth, right?
Well, not the bandwidth. This computer, because I'm only running one tonight. Like, I can't run the other one until I get the Wi-Fi fixed. I'm actually running the direct connect. Let me see here. So let's see how much it takes up. That's fine.
Doesn't take much.
I'll share this one. There we go. Let me know if you can see it then.
Okay, see black rain. Okay, there we go. All right, I got it. Yeah.
Cool. And it's looking like it's running about 55%, so we should be good.
Okay, cool. Well, if we look at the screen now, you see all these craters are like a jumble. He's probably near the southern hemisphere of the moon right now, perhaps. And of course, he has the camera rotated, so you can't really tell where it's facing. You can tell actually that east and west is actually to the left and the right. I'm sorry, to the up and down. It's actually not to the left and right because of the way he's got the camera, I think, and the way the crater's shadows are going. But that said, let's talk about the different types of craters. If we look at the screen now, you can see that, of course, besides the Terminator here, you see that there's these little tiny pockmark type craters. There's a few craters that have a flat bottom. And, you know, when he slows down a bit, you can actually see that there's some craters that actually have a central peak in the middle. Mm-hmm. Now, every crater has the potential to be a very, very, show us a very different feature. It depends on the angle of impact of the original impactor that struck the moon. It depends on the speed of the impactor. And that speed translates to the amount of kinetic energy, that is energy from motion, that the impactor has when it strikes the moon. That impactor, if it's a very slow impact, then it could just go plof and land in the surface. All right, kind of like a spacecraft would, that's landing, softly on the moon. It would just go plof. Now, there's nothing to break it, nothing to slow it down, so it would probably impact at a far higher speed. The higher the impact, the more thermal energy is generated by the impact. Any type of typical meteor, like the ones we're seeing here that made this crater, in fact, this particular impact, probably the impactor might have been moving, say, 20,000 miles an hour. All right? And it's coming from a long distance with nothing. The impactor is coming from a long distance. It would have never slowed it down. So when the thing hits, it strikes with such force that much, if not all, of that meteor is obliterated, and the kinetic energy, the energy from motion of that meteor, is converted to energy. All right. Mm-hmm. This particular meteor was a large enough size with a large enough impact energy so that you could see that it made a central peak. All right. That central peak is generated by the impact. This is called a complex crater. Now, complex craters can be, round craters with a central peak, like we saw there, or they can be a crater that has a set of terraces. Okay, the craters have these what look like rings that come down from the crater walls. They're terraced walls. All right, they step down to the next level on the wall and they go around the crater that way. Copernicus is an example, and that terracing is part of that terracing is part of the process by which these craters are made. And yes, Heidi, I'm on with Keith. Just answering her in chat.
We're having a party, Heidi, and you're invited.
And it turns out that okay. So now on the right of the screen, you can actually see that there's a complex crater. All right. Very, very clearly. And it has a central peak that's really, really interesting. You can see that. A great shadow. Now, if you look also, you see that some of the craters have flat bottoms. And that looks strange. All right. Now, the reason they have flat bottoms is because they were flooded with lava. Okay. They were not a flat bottom crater to begin with. If you could see the rest of the structure without that lava there, it's a deep hole. Right, it's a big pit with possibly a central peak that has been since, covered by the flooding of the crater by other lava. See, so that's something that happens with lunar craters. Okay, the bottom of the crater can get flooded. All right, and it could have been a complex crater. All right, in fact, it probably was. Now, if we go to smaller craters where there's less impact energy, those craters make this little tiny bowl shape, B-O-W-L, a bowl-shaped crater. That's what's called a simple crater. And a simple crater is a crater that, whereas I say simple crater meaning, it didn't have enough impact energy to make this shock wave, which basically made this central peak from material sloughing back from the walls, or from the edge of the crater. That's called, the transient crater, where when it came back and made that little impact in the center, that the material that rebounds back to the center makes the central peak. That kind of energy wasn't present for the simple crater. But it was, enough for the meteor impactor to be completely vaporized by the energy from the impact. Now, another thing that determines what happens on the impact is the consistency of the material it's hitting. If it hits solid iron, you're going to get a very different thing than if it hits just sand. So you still get thermal energy release, but hitting something like a iron-rich soil or a bonded soil, more rocky soil, it's going to be harder for the meteor, the impactor, to gouge a hole, so to speak.
Right.
So you get a different look, and so studying the topography and how things look on the moon like this is a very tricky task. All right, because you have to figure out how the impactor hit. You have to figure out the energy at which it hit, the angle at which it hit, and the energy, of course, is translated from the speed of the impact. And that's a very important factor for us, because if we understand the speed at which an impactor struck, it tells us a lot about what was happening before the impact and where this thing was. If they were all slow speed, it means that most of them had gotten bound up with some type of other gravitational gravity well, gravitational force within the solar system. Mm-hmm. All right. If it wasn't, if it was all high-speed impacts, then it means that some other big event happened to cause them to go spaceborne and then shower on the moon at high speed.
Right.
So that's an interesting thing. Now,
but is there like enough? You're saying that the gravity is what? What's the percentage of 1/6 of the gravity Earth? Now I'm guessing that's not going to pull things in as fast as say the Earth does, but it's going to pull it back in fast enough to make a dent, if you will.
Well, yeah, and don't forget that anything hitting the moon already had some type of energy to begin with.
Right.
It wasn't just sitting still in space. It was blasted out of something else. And as we've seen recently, it could have been an interstellar interloper.
Yep.
We saw that large cigar-shaped asteroid that came winging through at 85,000 miles an hour. And we raced to put our telescopes on this thing of all kinds to try and get some type of information from it. And we did. We actually got an idea of what we were looking at. It was 10 times longer than it was wide. And it's the first true interstellar asteroid that was actually seen. And you'll say, well, how do you know it was interstellar? Couldn't it have come from the asteroid belt? Well, the answer is no. And you may say, well, how can you possibly know that? You can know that because of the trajectory it was taking when it came into our solar system. In other words, where it's coming from, where it's going to. All right? It's coming in because it was attracted by the sun. And it's going out because it has enough energy to get out. All right? It's not trapped by our gravity well. So it had enough energy to go winging through. So it was definitely a rogue. It was something that came through that we knew nothing about. That had nothing to do with our asteroid belt or the Kuiper belt or the Oort cloud, for that matter. And it just went right on through. And in fact, it was very quick.
I should mention to anybody that just now joining us live right now is Mark D'Antonio from NASA's Unexplained Files. Or
where is he? Is he here?
What on Earth? All over cable television. And of course, from the Sky Tour live stream with Mark D'Antonio. And I have to say, every single time Paul gets behind this telescope, he just gets better and better and better.
Is it not true?
I am literally blown away tonight by just the clarity of what he's getting. Now you can say, obviously the atmosphere has something to do with it. And of course we're rising towards zenith right now, or very close to zenith. But still, you realize the minute amount of adjustments that have to be done in order to get this clarity that he's at right now. It's just insanity.
Another thing, notice that we're seeing turbulent air cells between us and the end of our atmosphere on the way to the moon. And you can actually see they kind of make the image shimmer a little. Mm-hmm. I'm noticing that it's actually not very bad tonight.
Right.
And so I would have to say that the atmospheric seeing and transparency are probably both pretty good. It's not bad at all.
It's almost like I find something new every single time we do one of these streams. And we've been doing these streams now for almost 2 years. And every single night we find something new to come in. Like tonight, it just so happens to be those mountain ranges in there are just coming up so clear and just so crisp. It's mind-blowing that this is actually a telescope from Earth. Once again, we have to give a shout-out to the camera guy who built the camera, for the optics involved with it. And, of course, the master telescope guy down there in Miami himself, Paul, who's running the things and making sure we're getting the good views. Now, I did want to address something that I did see earlier in the chat, which was something that we have addressed a while. This is
that the Earth is flat?
No, about the crater depths. That it's more of a perspective thing. A lot of people say, well, all the moon craters are all the same depth. They all look the same, and that's we know that comes down to perspective. But explain that, what we can be looking at that looks almost the same on here, they could be hundreds, even maybe 1,000-foot difference in depth, but we wouldn't be able to tell it because of our perspective looking here.
Okay, when we look at the craters, we're looking at them from a perspective that's kind of unique. We're 240,000 miles away from this body, and so our ability to discern, say, the depth of a crater compared to, say, the Maria, the highlands or lowlands around it, is not really possible. We can't really do that, right? So this crater here that we're zoomed in on for a few seconds that we've been here, you can't tell whether the floor of that crater is deeper than the Maria around it. It is, okay? But you can't really tell, and the shadow gives you an illusion sometimes that it's deeper than it is. So this is a complex crater that we're looking at right there that we kind of zoomed out of just a moment ago. But the depths of the craters are various, and you want to prove that to yourself, then you'll have to join me on the Sky Tour live stream when we do the new and improved Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter moon map study. And so this is something that is really important, because there is a way for you, every one of you, and many more, to go find anything on the moon down to a very, very small amount. You could see a boulder on the moon that's about a meter across, okay, with the LRO, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. They put all that data online. You can get to it. And that site is, if you look up in Google, it's the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter Quick Map. Quick Map, all one word, QUICKMAP, Quick Map. It's run by the Arizona State University Planetary Group, and they have all the data. And you go anywhere, the near side, the far side of the moon, and the poles. All right? And you can see there's tools within that Quick Map, which is what I'm getting to. There's tools within the Quick Map that allow you to just drag a line across the moon and see the contours, see the high elevations, the low elevations. And you'll be surprised to see that a crater might have a crater wall that looks like it's all the same height. But then when you drag the line across it, you'll see that the one on the far side, the one on the, say, the western side of the crater, is 1,000 or 1,200 feet higher than the wall of the same crater on the eastern side, on the opposite edge. All right? And you'll notice at that point that even a crater floor that looks flat may not actually be flat. It might actually be slanted, sloped, domed, or concave, or a combination of all of them. It might be stepped and you just can't see it. It's all a matter of the light. So the LRO, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter Quick Map, will show you that. And they have a new one online, and I'm going to teach people how to use it again. I did do what I call a Cloudy Night live tour, a Sky Tour, where we actually take people through these applications. And I'm going to do another one for the new and improved version of the LRO Quick Map that just went up. And it's all different, and it has a bunch of new tools, and it makes your browsing of the moon much, much faster and easier.
I was actually checking that out earlier today, actually.
I know. You see, we're gluttons. We have to.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, while I'm here with you, I'm editing a Sky Tour live stream image to stick up on the site and doing the finishing touches on it. It's called the Bubble Nebula. It's just gorgeous. So everything about the universe is fascinating to me. I don't know why. I'm always fascinated by things I simply can't touch.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Crazy.
But, so the craters are different depths. And sometimes their depth varies across the base of bottom of their own crater floor. So it's just an illusion that you have to understand is just that. They're not all the same depth. It's just something that it looks that way. We've kind of make that assumption from childhood too. When we see craters, you think of them as being the same depth, and they're not. Not at all. In fact, on the far side of the moon, there is the lowest point on the moon and the highest point on the moon is on the far side that we don't see. The lowest point is the Aitken Basin. That's Aitken, right? You know the Aitken Basin, Keith, I think.
Yep.
Okay, on the far side. And then up north, in between two craters, is a high spot. And that high spot is the highest point on the moon, and it's much, much higher than Mount Everest, by far. So it's a very interesting topography on the far side that we can't see. And we will get to later on in the stream, perhaps, why the near side has more of these dark gray maria and the far side has none, save one little one on one crater basin.
Yeah. Jeez. I'll tell you what, I just saw Proxy there mention TBS. Yeah. Chris from Take Back Space, I actually have talked to him, and he's actually going to come on with us sometime. I haven't talked to him lately. It was during the last moon cycle. But he's actually going to come on now. I believe, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I believe he is a guy that is all about the electric space or electric universe theory, which is something I want to talk to him about because I myself haven't really read up and, have you ever heard of the electric universe theory at all?
I have, yes, I have indeed. And the electric universe theory is, it's a theory, and the whole point of the electric universe is that it basically, electricity is another fundamental force that we're aware of on the Earth. We're aware of how charges move through substances from conduction. We understand how they move and don't move because of insulation. We know how they're shunted. We know how they're channeled. Okay, that's why we have wires. Wires carry charges properly, and insulation does not. Okay, but the universe also has electric fields. Now, electric fields are made via magnetic fields. Okay, for instance, our Earth generates a magnetic field. Okay, and so if you have and we're going to go in this direction first. If you have the iron core of our Earth, the nickel iron core of our Earth is solid. The outer core is molten. Now, the inner core and the outer core basically rub against each other. Okay, and that creates electric charge. That electric charge translates into a magnetic field. Well, in the same way, you can induce an electric field by a strong magnetic field, okay, and go the opposite way. So the electric universe deals with all of those things because the Earth is basically powered by a dynamo, an electric dynamo in its core. That electric dynamo, the outer and inner core moving against each other, that electric charge creates the magnetic field. The magnetic field protects us from the sun's ultraviolet radiation, and it actually causes this the magnetic field around the Earth called a magnetosphere.
Now, this might relate to it, and I just want to throw this out there because I think just my brain working, thinking that it might have something to do with what you're talking about. Is this maybe what these electrical charges that people see after, say, an earthquake, like they see before or during an earthquake? They happen to see these because a lot of people report during earthquakes they see balls of light flashing in the sky.
Yeah, that's right. Those type of earth lights have been reported, and it's possible that these are related to the nature at which the rock strata is moving through the earthquake. Because, again, that's going to generate electrical charge in a different way, perhaps, than rubbing your foot on a carpet. But it's actually, rock strata moving against another rock strata will generate electrical charge, perhaps. And where does that go? It gets stored up as charge, but you know how it works. Okay, you rub your foot on a carpet and touch your brother or sister's nose, and you see a little blue arc, and they snap at you and they yell at you and they chase you around the house and trying to kick you in the butt. Okay, well that blue arc basically is an earth light. in a sense. Okay, it's a light that's generated by the arcing of an electric charge that was built up because of what you did, your foot against the carpet.
Right.
Well, if the carpet was a rock strata of one kind and the foot was another rock strata, the result could be a different type of earth light that you see in a very different way. Because there's no finger to touch the nose. I mean, but it's going to potentially come out perhaps as like a glow, which could be airborne. It could be in the air because electrical charge can go through the air. We see it every thunderstorm. You feel it. You feel charges climbing your body when lightning's about to strike you. And you can say, hey, lightning's about to... And then, of course, you're struck by lightning, and no one ever gets to know about why the lightning was climbing, why the charges were climbing your body, because you're now a charred black mass on the ground. But, that's neither here nor there. But those earth lights could very well be related to, a charge buildup, geologically.
Okay.
I don't have any doubt. I think that's a very strong possibility. Maybe that has Dahlem lights.
I think that would be a good conversation to have on. I mean, I don't totally understand it, but I think Chris does. Once again, we're talking about Chris from over on the Take Back Space channel, and maybe he can enlighten me a little bit into it. As I said, I haven't really read into it and stuff, but I think it'd be an interesting conversation to have either way. Sweet. All right. Well, that's kind of a entry-level introduction to the electric universe theory, anyway.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Basically, it's trying to say that, maybe the electricity that can be generated in the universe has more to do with the universe than we give it credit for. Right. I mean, if you look at every atomic transition, okay, let's take a simple one. The hydrogen atom has one proton and one electron. Now, the first thing you have to do is get rid of your preconceived notions about what an electron is. An electron isn't this little tiny singular particle that's whirling around the proton, zipping around. The electron, and this is going to sound weird to you, is everywhere at once, in a sense, okay? Mm-hmm. And you don't know exactly where it is, okay? There's a principle called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle where you can't really predict where that electron's going to be at any one time. So basically, talk about the electron as a cloud. It's an electron cloud around the center of the hydrogen atom. Mm-hmm. So if you provide energy to that electron, all right, by beaming ultraviolet light at it, then the electron wants to climb in energy level. It'll want to absorb energy. And in the same way that a rocket fires its rocket when it's in orbit, that'll put the rocket in a higher orbit and make the rocket go farther away from the Earth and orbit at a farther distance. You add energy to go to a higher orbit. So if an electron receives energy from some outside source, like an ultraviolet star, then it's going to climb in its orbit, so to speak, around the proton. And that sends it to a higher energy state or energy level. Okay? Oh. And if it adds more energy, a lot more energy, just as if you fire the rocket for, say, 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you could get enough energy to just escape the entire Earth's gravity. And in the atomic world, we call that ionization. When the electron actually leaves the atom of a hydrogen atom, the hydrogen atom is ionized. And ions have a charge. They have a net charge. And that charge for the hydrogen atom is a plus, plus one. Right? It's a plus one charge because of the proton now has no complementary negative electron. So, and in astronomy, the hydrogen atom losing an electron is very common. Okay, and then when that electron recombines, we call that electron capture or recombination. As the electron combines back with the hydrogen atom, it's giving off energy, and that release of energy, you see, is manifested as light. All right. And so when we look at, say, the Orion Nebula, which we'll be looking at in SkyTour Livestream quite a lot, and we have already, and if you look on our SkyTour Livestream Facebook site, or you'll see pictures that we put up of the Orion Nebula, and that light is a characteristic reddish light. Okay, that's something that is from a discrete atomic transition, and we see that a lot in the universe. There's a lot of discrete transitions, and it's based on energy. All right, and remember the energy that's provided. This is an ultraviolet star. That is a star that's giving off a lot of ultraviolet light. Our sun gives off ultraviolet light, but it's not as strong as some stars, like a hot blue star or a hot O star could be very, very high ultraviolet, tens of thousands of times the amount of output as our sun. And, in terms of ultraviolet alone. And that energy can be manifested in a variety of ways, not the least of which is an electrical energy, should it come into contact with the right materials. So the electric universe theory is important if it's true. It's actually looking at that method for explaining things we already understand differently. So things that the way certain craters might look, can be affected by electricity. And there's a lot of things. The way galaxies form can be related to the electric universe. Because galaxies have spiral arms, okay, but we think that there's a big black hole in the middle of these bigger galaxies, right?
Right.
So a galaxy that has a large set of spiral arms, like our Milky Way, and there's a variety of galaxies, by the way. So there's spiral galaxies where you have the little gently swooping arms that are spiraling around. The Andromeda galaxy is an example. The M33, the galaxy right next to it in the sky, actually, they're about the same distance. The Triangulum galaxy is a little farther away. That's a spiral, but it's a more loose spiral than the Andromeda galaxy. Then there's our spiral galaxy, which is actually a galaxy that is called a barred spiral. Bar, like Barred, barred spiral. There's actually a central bar through our galaxy of stars, a heavy, dense area, and the spiral arms sort of come off of that, right? And barred spirals are really interesting looking, and we are a barred spiral, and we didn't know that until this century, so that's pretty interesting how we came to that fact. So, there's a lot, and all of it relates to and has, electricity can play a role potentially in a lot of the way these things all happened.
Right. And it's for anybody that's just joining us. I did see somebody asked earlier, just so because they might be asking, well, who is this guy talking? Like, how do we know he knows what he's talking about?
I don't even know who I am.
What are your credentials? Just so the people that are listening know that you're just not some guy in his basement. Actually, in truth, you are some guy in his basement on a computer. But
well, I'm in my business office, but okay. I mean,
yeah. Same difference. Same difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it looks like a World War II battleship in here, though. I got a hatch to get in. I've got portholes for windows. I mean, that's the real deal here, but...
Well, let's go through the credential list, just so everybody that's listening knows what we're dealing with.
I mean, you want me to talk about myself?
Yes, absolutely.
That's awkward. All right.
Just basics, just the basics.
All right. I'm the chief photo and video analyst for the Mutual UFO Network. I have a degree in astronomy. And I have a further degree, not quite a degree. I'm still in that process in computer science. That's I was doing that as a to get into the computer science and industry, but I don't want to go into computer science anymore. I want to actually go more toward my planetary science. And in astronomy, my specialty these days is exoplanets, or planets around other stars. And to understand planets around other stars, you've got to understand how our planets formed and how they interact, how the orbital characteristics of the moons, say, around Jupiter, how those relate to each moon within that same system, and how they relate to Jupiter itself, the types of things induced by that, like tides induced on the planet Earth. For instance, why do we get a tidal bulge on the opposite side of the Earth, all right, as the moon, and one on the side that's on the face of the moon? Okay, why is it not lined up exactly with the moon? Why is it ahead or behind a little bit, depending on which side you're looking at? So I mean, all these things relate to planetary science, and I think that you have to understand planetary science literally to the nth degree, so that you'll understand planets around other stars. Quick example, all right, and that's part of my background. Okay, so chief photo and video analyst for MUFON, astronomer. That's what I got my degree in, and I occasionally, you can find me on NASA's Unexplained Files a lot. You can find me on What on Earth and all the seasons of both shows, because I'm sort of the voice of reason amid the chaos sometimes. And, I'm being asked about working on another series tomorrow, actually. They're going to let me know. And that would take me to Los Angeles for a while. So I think, so that's my background. I spent a lot of time. I own the John Zach Memorial Observatory here in Connecticut. It's temporarily here. You'll know it as the Sky Tour Livestream Observatory. And the Sky Tour Livestream Observatory, Sky Tour Livestream, has its own channel on YouTube. And it's one of the 3 channels on the Astro Imaging Live. Or is it astroimaginglive.com, right?
You got it.
Yeah, astroimaginglive.com. We have P&K, we have Bill New York Skywatcher, and Sky Tour Livestream. The 3 of us are like a one-stop shop for streams. We want the wide-angle views from Bill. We want the moon and the planets from Paul and Keith. And we want the deep sky to show people things they can't possibly see on a normal basis. And I use a very sensitive camera, so you can see things in seconds that would take many minutes to see normally, or even hours. So that said, I try to know my stuff when it comes to astronomy. I've talked turkey with a lot of people. I've sat with Kip Thorne, who was he was the consultant on the movie Interstellar. And Kip Thorne is a really great astrophysicist and very nice guy. And
was that the guy that actually that when he was doing Interstellar, they were studying how stuff to put it in the movie, and he actually wrote 2 papers about some of the stuff he learned when they were actually working on the movie?
Well, he kept a notebook. I haven't actually talked to him since he did Interstellar, by the way. Okay. So I don't know that for sure. So you'll know probably as much as I do about that. On the other side, I do own a company called FX Models. That's letter F, letter X Models. It's a visual effects company. I do a lot of television and movie work, commercials. You can see, if you look up on YouTube, you look up iPad Pro, Great Big Universe. You can see that. That's one that we worked on. Thank you, Ian, for putting the link in. He had the link to the chat. And Great Big Universe is a really neat commercial. We Alabama Shakes did the music for it. And everything in that commercial, except the end where you pull out of the space scenes and you get to an iPad seeing persons working on it. Everything in that commercial was done without special effects, meaning no computer effects, no computer graphics. They were all practical effects. That is, effects that we did with mechanisms and devices and special setups. And that was Doug Trumbull's vision of that commercial.
Yeah. And
Doug and I are very good friends, and we're doing a UFO hunting system together.
But that's also what makes you good for MUFON, is pretty much you can spot fakery when you see it. You have programs to help you do that, but obviously, you can spot fakes a mile away when it comes to the UFO phenomena. But once again, we have to say this because it seems like everybody takes it out of context. We are not anti-UFO.
No, not at all. I've had experiences I can't explain, and I firmly believe that they're probably here. I mean, on my stream and elsewhere, and then the UK Sun did an article on me, which talks about I was a guest on a submarine back when you could do that. They don't take visitors and guests to sea anymore. But back when they did, I was on board a sub, and we actually saw something on the sonar that could not be explained, and it was moving several hundred knots according to the calculations done by the technician doing the work at that particular console, and they basically buried it. Now, and he was told to bury it after logging it. And a couple of years later, I did have an opportunity to work for the Joint Chiefs, because my business, I'm a Navy contractor, and as such, I've done classified work, a lot of it. And I had an opportunity to work on a project, and I asked the person very, very high up in the U.S. Navy, in fact, so high up it makes your head spin. I asked about this fast mover program, which is what these folks labeled it on the sub. And I asked, can you tell me anything about the fast mover program? And I was told, I can't talk about that program, I'm sorry. And I was in his house when I asked him that question, right? Just me and him.
Classic.
Yeah, it's just incredible. So, yes, I believe that they're here. Okay, I just think that they're using a technology that, doesn't allow them to be seen fully by our understanding of the four dimensions, X, Y, Z, and time that we're within. That's why I'm working with Douglas Trumbull, who's, Doug Trumbull did all the special effects for Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Blade Runner. Was responsible for creating Huey, Dewey, and Louie in Silent Running with Bruce Dern, that movie, that classic movie about the domed forests being preserved until they were told to come back to Earth and blow them up or whatever. Great movie. So, Doug is an Academy Award winner, and he's also someone who's really passionate about finding UFOs and wants to answer the question the same way I do. He's a very good friend of Jacques Vallée, who in the UFO world people know is probably the most well-respected UFO researcher in history, besides J. Allen Hynek. And so, when I did a talk out at the UFO Congress in Fountain Hills, Arizona a couple of years ago, Doug came with me, and we actually ended up doing a joint talk. I did a 45-minute talk, and then Doug did a 45-minute talk. And, we kind of played off each other. And Jacques Vallée was there, and I ended up spending several days there with Doug and Jacques, and I met Jacques for the first time, and amazing man. And then we talked about our UFO detection system. Now, we originally called it UFOTOG 2. That's UFOTOG, and then numeral 2. Now, that was Doug's name for it. I told Doug we have to change the name because funding doesn't come when you have the word UFO in its title.
Yeah.
So we're calling it the Aerial Anomaly Detection System. And we're even toying with shortening that further to, Anomaly Hunter or something like that. And but the thing is, we want to do this. We want to create these things, and these little platters are going to be able to do things like, for instance, observe the moon all night and all day where it's visible. And if anything happens that's strange or unexpected, we'll get an alert because we have software that can detect differences, millisecond to millisecond. And I mean, there'll be some false positives, but we can train it. All right. And it'll look at the sky, it'll look at the moon, it'll look at everything in the sky. So it'll be great because then it could send us an alert right to our cell phone using the GPS satellite system. That already works.
And I think the best part about that whole program that you guys are doing is it's going to be public access.
Absolutely.
You're not going to hoard the data or go over first before releasing it. It goes from that to whatever it has to do, and then to right to release, where anybody and their brother can, go through the data and look at it for themselves. Which is pretty much the same thing that the Dave Schock is doing.
CubeSat.
With CubeSat for disclosure, which I haven't heard from David in a while, so I hope he's okay. I know he was having some health problems, but so hopefully he'll be back in it soon. But yeah, I mean, between those two, I mean, it's looking good for UFO detection in the future anyway. Yeah.
And Heidi makes a comment in the chat, which makes me both want to kick her in the butt and laugh with her. Two of the hosts so far on the shows I've done called it UFO to go. And I was like, something, that's actually a better name.
UFO to go.
But the only problem is it has the word UFO in there, and so we got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Now, Tom DeLonge, before anyone asks, and if they do, Tom DeLonge is doing this To the Stars Academy and doing this thing where they want to do a scientific search for, evidence and so forth. So I contacted him and left him, information about what our project is. And I got a very curt letter back saying, yeah, we're not accepting any kind of, projects at this time. So it makes me wonder what they're actually doing. So I don't really know yet. Maybe they've got a plan, but I hope they do because it'd be great.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to take that whole thing. I guess I'm playing a wait and see with the whole thing because they made a big hoopla out of it. But let me ask you, is there any UFO or moon stories that you heard or from people in the UFO community that really intrigue you? You have tons of speakers through the years, from Hoagland to, tons of guys that are saying that there's, stuff on the moon and stuff. Are there any people like that really intrigued you and actually caught your interest?
Well, actually, for the cluster crap that it was, there was a show I did which is all over Netflix and other places. It was the Aliens on the Moon show. And I think Amy Title did that too, right? Isn't that the one that she did? Amy's a wonderful person who's very, very knowledgeable about lunar landings and our human presence on the moon. She knows everything there is, and could leave all of us in the dust with her knowledge. I mean,
and she also has a YouTube channel on here if you guys want to check her out. It's the name of the YouTube channel is Vintage Space.
Yeah, I'll just put that in the chat too.
Yep.
But the thing is, I had, when I was doing that show, what they were showing me was features on the moon that could be something else, and they were showing me colorized transparency type, transparent or translucent, overlays outlining what they think the thing is. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I said, well, I just need to see the raw file. Okay, and they said, well, we don't have the raw file. You just have to use the colored ones. I said, well, the colored ones sort of impart a shape, all right, that isn't necessarily there.
Right.
So I don't understand. I don't understand. Why I can't see the regular raw, images. And then they gave me some, but there was one that was a plain image that actually had a geometry to it, and it was an object that looked like two rings next to each other. Now you hear ring and all that stuff on the moon, and you think, well, okay, crater. But these were not flat. These were not projected onto the ground like you would see an ellipse from a circle from the edge looks like an ellipse, right? This wasn't how it was.
And this wasn't the things that look like gears, was it?
Yes, it was.
Okay,
it was actually yeah. And I was very intrigued by that one image out of all the ones they showed. But I only had about 5 minutes to look at it before I had to start talking about it like I'm some expert on this one image. Mm-hmm. And that does a disservice to other people that were actually have done that. So I was trying to, make it very clear to them that they showed up at the house at 8 o'clock in the morning to start filming, and they didn't show me a single photo until 10 o'clock at night. Jesus. And then they wanted to quit at midnight.
I noticed in that show too that there was a lot of cutting and kind of putting what they wanted people to hear and not exactly what you, because right. I mean, being that as long as I've known you now, I know some of the things in that show, you can tell when you're being cut off.
Oh, I was.
Or when they're cherry picking statements, to fit their agenda.
Yeah.
So.
There's a quick aside. Tracks. You're right. Bruce Dern in Silent Running. That's the one. Yep.
But I couldn't put a lot of stake in that show. I mean, it was interesting hearing from Amy and yourself and a couple other people in that program.
If you only heard the rest of what I said.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. And then and what lost the credibility to me was the guy that's telescoping a star, and claiming it's a spaceship just in orbit. And he's the only one that can see it. That's what lost it for me.
Yeah, whenever you have that kind of thing where there's only one person, or they only communicate through me, then you're in a quote unquote Stephen Greer situation, where you have to pay me the big bucks to be able to see it, kind of a thing, And not that this other guy was asking for the big bucks, but he was he was definitely set up as the sole source, and that's always a problem for me.
Right, and then you go to like a professional astronomer, like we did with Thierry Legault, and he literally points a telescope at Vega and makes a structure out of it, and it looks like a 3-dimensional spaceship. And he's like, "That's how it's done." He's like, "There you go." He's like, "It's nothing special. You can pretty much do it with any telescope and any camera."
That's right.
He's like, anybody's claiming these are spaceships just floating around, in an orbit around Earth is just silly. And then, of course, I bring that information up to the person, and, next thing you know, they're turning tail, and, all of a sudden we're all government agents. So you never know.
Yeah.
But that's what lost the credibility, that simple thing. And that was, who was it, Robert Kiviat that did that show? Bob
Kiviat. He also did Alien Autopsy.
Okay, yeah.
See, now, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying, I don't really know Robert Kiviat. I've seen him on a couple things.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's taken, I mean, a lot of people have said he's taken it a little more seriously these days than before. It was just about, producing material for television, where it's not the case now.
And I'd like to think that I had something to do with that, because, I really hammered him for cutting out my words. For instance, I would say, "That's a very interesting photo that you showed me, but I can tell that this object is probably naturally occurring, and I can actually recreate it and show you how it was made. And to do that, here's the lunar soil that I actually made, the simulated lunar soil. It does has the same type of static properties, has the same type of clumping properties. This ultra dry soil that I have can clump together and form some interesting stuff, and I can actually make the shape of that thing you're seeing right there." And I was told by the producer that was here, he looked at me right in the eye after seeing me simulate a perfect, arcing, what looks like an arcing land bridge over a deep valley. Right. And there's just two valleys side by side where the top ridge between them was illuminated by the low angled sun. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he says to me, "That won't get in the show."
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like, if you're gonna have that, you need to call a spade. When something's bull, you need to call it out as bull. And it might not be good for your program, but at least now now you have people taking other routes to try to find, what truth there is. And it's, just by continuing, going on the way they are, just constant, these people that have been proven for, like, one person, and I don't even care, I will call the name out, that said it's a total hoax in the UFO community, is Jaime Maussan, whatever you want to call him. This guy has been proven time and time again to be involved with fakery, and with him it is all about ratings and putting stuff together for a TV show. And every time somebody says we have this massive announcement and we're gonna do this and this, and I was like, okay, that's cool, let's check this out. And then it said, and being presented by Jaime Maussan, and I'm like, okay, nope, done.
Yeah. Well, see, Jaime was the problem with Jaime Maussan is that he tends to believe everything that comes his way.
Yeah, he's very good.
I'm not making any excuses for the guy, but let me tell you a little story about Jaime Maussan. I did a show called UFOs Over the Earth, all right? Mm-hmm. And in that show, they had one Mexican sighting where these two boys claimed to be the only ones that could photograph this UFO flying over this area, over the town, over the buildings. Right. And they had a number of photographs of it. It looked really cool. Wow, that's neat. When I analyzed it, I found that they actually had cut and pasted this thing into their imagery. Right. There were no videos, of course, because they didn't have the ability to make fake videos themselves at that time. So, when I looked at their video, or their imagery, I could see it was fake, and I called it out as such, and I explained how it was done, and I even showed how it was done. I showed these evidence for it.
Right.
Jaime Maussan got his own photo analyst on his show, okay? And he basically ripped me a new back end, saying that I didn't know what I was talking about. This is Jaime now, okay? Mm-hmm. I didn't know what I was talking about. How can I possibly, say what I'm saying? And to prove that, I'm going to go to my photo analyst, so-and-so. He has a PhD and this, that, or the other. He gets the guy on, and this guy who's supposedly so smart says, well, the aliens can make you see whatever they want you to see. Yeah. Oh, so that's how you negate what I said, okay? By just saying, well, the aliens can make you see whatever you want to see. So, you know what? You're wrong. It's like, okay. See, so that right there was just, that's a keeper. That's the kind of thing you just gotta hang on to and say, oh, I gotta just keep listening to this guy. It's hilarious.
Here's the thing about and I'm not sure, because of the whole fakery that was going on in the UFO world. And once again, this is just a personal opinion of mine, but I'm starting to feel the same way about Stephen Greer. That everything's just for
only starting.
Yeah, well, it's. As soon as you start, requesting money to take people out in the middle of a desert and point at lights in the sky, and saying, just making these absurd claims and saying that you're the only one that can do it, and it's just, I think Mr. Greer has lost his way. Put it that way.
Well, I have a phrase for Stephen Greer, and he wasn't always this way, by the way. He was a little more level-headed, but I think. Just like Billy Meyer, he ended up in a place. I'll talk about Billy Meyer if nobody knows who he is. But Billy Meyer is one who, I'm sorry, Stephen Greer is one who originally was, pretty level-headed, and then he ended up going down the path where he realized, I think, that he could make money on this.
Yeah.
And then he went from Stephen Greer, country doctor, to L. Ron Hubbard. Okay.
Yeah.
And L. Ron Hubbard famously said, if you really want to amass great sums of wealth, create a religion. And he did. And he called it Scientology. And he made billions. Okay.
Continues.
And it continues to make billions, right?
Yep.
And I call Stephen Greer the L. Ron Hubbard of ufology, because he's trying to do the same type of thing, set himself up as the focal point.
Yep.
And the proof is when you try to do one of his quote unquote CE5 sessions and try to get try to call in the aliens yourself, say, you try to do that, he comes down hard on you for that and says, well, you don't know how to do it, you're not doing it right, you got to buy my materials and do it this way. Yeah, you can do it too if you spend $2,500 to buy this, that, and the other thing that he demands you buy, or else he'll shut you right down.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what are you talking about? That's the kind of crap which really bothers me. Thank you, Ian.
But
just shout out.
I will say one person in ufology, not really in ufology anymore, but one person that I believe 100% that was a controversial figure, back in the late 80s, early 90s, was Bob Lazar. I believe Bob Lazar.
Yeah, Bob Lazar actually he friended me on Facebook. Believe it or not, he's actually coming out of the shell. Yeah, and that's nice because do we know whether Bob Lazar is telling the truth? No, we don't. What's the preponderance of the evidence, though? Well, the same people that say Sandy Hook didn't happen and Columbine was a false flag might say that Bob Lazar's credentials were also hacked and destroyed.
Right.
And that doesn't lend credibility to Bob Lazar. It's indirect incredibility. All right.
Well, to me, it's the way Bob has acted since he's come out with it. Now, of course, there was some sort of minor fame that came when it initially happened, but he realized very quick that he did not want it, and he backed himself out of it, and he moved out of Nevada, and he started up his own scientific store out in, I think it was Illinois somewhere or something like that. And he stayed out of the limelight, and he made sure to stay out of the limelight. And anybody, he said that, he had to set up a fake email account for anybody asking because he doesn't want to talk about it. And he has said in public he'd rather you not believe it. It's easier for him.
Yeah. Yeah, and something, guys like that, to me, they're like basically far and away better in terms of the credibility issue, a credibility, I should say, manufacturer than guys like Stan Romanek. Okay, I caught Stan Romanek lying directly with video evidence. Okay, to back it up. Stan Romanek was the darling of the UFO community for a period of time, and I kind of was a little concerned when I went and I was speaking at a conference, and he was speaking at the conference too. And at the banquet, Stan shows up in a full tuxedo. So he's dressed far and away above everybody else. So he's the focal point. Everybody's looking at Stan. And I was like, either that's a major fashion faux pas or he wants to make it look like he's above everybody else. And I let it go as a fashion faux pas, saying, Stan, silly man, But then he was doing an audio interview with my friend, Alejandro Rojas, Open Minds. Okay, he's Alejandro's the general manager of Open Minds. He owns the UFO Congress now. Okay. He's doing a phenomenal job. The man personally is adding credibility to the UFO arena and subject every single day. Mm-hmm. And I respect him greatly for it. I'll never ever say anything bad about him, in spite of all the bad things he says about me. That's a joke. But the truth is, Alejandro was doing this radio interview with Stan Romanek, and I was listening to the radio interview. And Alejandro had to break to go to a public service announcement. And in the background, Stan was waiting. And, typically when you go to a PSA, public service announcement, the host turns down your input line to the show.
Right.
Well, Alejandro didn't do it. He probably should have, but he didn't because Stan was being quiet, so to speak. At least he seemed to be. But then while Alejandro's reading, I'm starting to hear this electronic voice coming in the background very faintly. And I turned up my mic, my speakers, my headset, and I'm listening very intently. And I listened to it later too. And I kept hearing, you should really. And I'm thinking, well, what is that? And I'm thinking, is it a bleed through from another channel or something? And then 6 minutes later, okay, when he was back on the air, all of a sudden he's talking with Alejandro, and then Stan kind of stutters with his voice for a second. And as I figured out later, that's where he was reaching for the go button on his little voice synthesizer that he had prepared and was preparing during the public service announcement, which is what I was hearing. And I heard, you should really learn to keep your mouth shut. And then Stan goes, what was that? And Alejandro says, hey, Stan, what was that? And Stan says, I don't have any idea. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, that's not right. Something's not right there. Now, you fast forward 2 months later, Stan's doing a video interview via Skype, and I'm watching it live.
With the guy from Australia.
With the guy from Australia. And Stan's talking to the guy, and again, at a certain point during the interview, and now Stan's sitting facing the camera, and you can just barely see his left and right hands in the view. He doesn't think they're visible. And the reason why becomes apparent for the next action that he does. Just a couple seconds into a certain segment of the interview, all of a sudden, you see his right hand flick a ballpoint pen into his own face. I started laughing out loud, and I'm saying, Stan, you idiot. I can't believe it. Oh, my gosh. I've never accidentally hit myself with a pen before. That's just and I started laughing, thinking Stan was just being clumsy. Okay, what a clumsy guy. And I laughed, kind of with him, kind of at him, and I kind of felt bad for laughing. And then Stan looks up and around, and he goes, where did that come from? And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, I've seen the video. It's really cringy.
Yeah, and then you see, he didn't know that his hand was in the shot, okay? And then 9 minutes after that, the other hand, which has a USB thumb drive, is sitting in it, and he flicks it up into the air. You watch him do it, and it goes right and hits him on the forehead and falls down the front. And he looks up and looks around, and you could tell just the way he's looking around is bad acting,
So do you think, in your opinion, do you think Remenek's a valid case of a guy going to the bad side or do you think it was fake from the beginning?
Well, here's the thing. I think all these guys could have had an experience that sent them into this whole field. But then to keep the gravy train rolling, they started to fabricate. Okay, I think Billy Meyer did that. Greer may have and continues to do. And Romanek did until he was basically stopped. Of course, he was stopped by a conviction, okay, a federal conviction, which, that's his business, and that's too bad that it happened, but it did. And I think that, and I'm not qualified to speak about that part of the case, and I won't. I just speak to the UFO stuff. And I just think that, Romanek started playing these paranormal games, saying that something paranormal was going on. And when the host of the Australian show said, Stan, what was that? I didn't see what that was. Did you see? Something just hit you on the head there, Stan. And he goes, yeah, I don't even know where that came from. And he says, it sort of looked like it was like a sort of a thumb drive, perhaps. And Stan's looking around. Oh, here it is. And he picks it up from the floor. And he goes, staring at it like it's something he'd never seen before.
Yeah.
It was in his left hand just a few minutes before that. And that's when I realized this man is a liar. And now everything he's done, I have to question. Everything he said, I have to question.
Exactly.
His alien in the window, when he came onto the scene with that alien in the window thing.
Right.
Okay, a little alien head rises up in a window, and he's there looking at it, trying to film something that was plaguing him. You see, and he sees this thing come up in the window while he's like adjusting the camera or whatever. Next thing you know, he hops like an animated cartoon character, woo-hoo-hoo, and waddles his arms like a cartoon character does when they're scared. And that was his fear reaction. Very, very badly done. And the head in the window was a static puppet's head. I looked at it very carefully. I studied it very carefully for like a month, just on and off, not fully, because I would never give him that kind of time. But when I looked at it over and over, I realized there's not a single bit of motion, at all. The cheeks aren't moving, the mouth isn't puckering up. And then someone did a CG version of it and said so. This is a CG version of Stan's sighting, and showed a head that looked very animated, far better than Stan's, and actually had reactions, subtle facial reaction. It was clearly someone who knew how to do what's called character rigging, which is something I do personally as well, but not to the extent that they do. I got into it at rudimentary level. I do computer rendering all day long sometimes, and photorealistic stuff that you can't tell isn't real. That's the idea, right?
Right.
Well, Stan used a physical puppet, and it was just very badly acted, and it was sort of like not even a B movie. It had to be a D movie, the way he acted. And so looking at that, I was just very disappointed. And then comes along, the interview with Alejandro, and then the Australian guy. And then, of course, the charges, the federal charges he came up on and he was convicted of.
So it's way too much stuff to slide to the side. It's pretty much, when it comes to the Romanek story anyway.
Yeah.
But is there anybody out there that you're really like that's bringing up really valid stuff that you're like almost mind blown by? You're going, wow, this is really intense. Maybe I should be looking into this pretty hard.
Yeah, there's a Russian guy. There's a Russian guy that talks about unknown submerged objects, or unidentified submerged object, USOs. And having seen one on a nuclear submarine as a guest, as I said, I like that because I didn't say anything about what I saw until the Russian guy came out and said what the Russian Navy's tracking and doing. Mm. The Russian Navy is seeing these things all the time in the subs and tracking them as the same that we are. We don't know what they are. They don't know what they are. They just know that there's something that really doesn't belong here. It's incredible. It's crazy. And the truth is no one knows how to deal with this. And so we just log it and dog it, basically. Right. And that's what happens. We log it and hide it. And that's, and there's a program to monitor those, as I pointed out, So very interesting stuff. And I just, and for me, watching your moon stream, perhaps someone watching this moon stream is going to catch the real thing. And why do I say that? Because the moon, if they have a way to hide themselves, which there's no reason they can't, it takes energy, by the way, to cloak yourself. If you want to call it cloaking, using science fiction terminology, that's fine. But they would have to hide themselves from the way our regular cameras work and the way the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter cameras work. They'd have to hide themselves from that kind of light that they might give off. So it's possible if they shift themselves, if they shift to a different dimension, if it's a dimensional thing, like in string theory propulsion technology seem to indicate, then maybe that's what happens. And if that does happen, then they might be able to hide themselves. But again, LRO sees things down to 0.5 meter per pixel in resolution. Right. So it has to be pretty darn effective or be entirely subsurface on the moon, Yeah. And, hey, they could actually, because they know that we're not in a lot of our oceans, they could be in our oceans, thus the USO deal, or they could be in the permanently dark craters on the moon. We don't know what's in there. We can't photograph them.
Right.
Okay. We could take long time exposures and see to the bottom of the craters, and we have. But, we can't see them with the same kind of detail. And if there's a crater that has a particularly steep wall, well, then all you have to do is burrow into that wall a little bit, and you can have a surveillance base there. And, they could take off from the north or south pole of the moon somewhere in a dark crater and then, do your thing. But I think everyone that takes these photographs and videos of the moon and says, look, there's a spaceship taking off from Aristarchus, okay? And they show this video of this little bright thing that's, a tenth the size of Aristarchus taking off. I think when I look at something like that, I'd say, this is something that an alien race would never, ever expose itself to. Right. They don't come here interstellar. They don't come here, set up a moon base, only to get caught because they took off and forgot to do it in such a way that they could hide, or take off with the biggest ship they have. Because the ship would have to be miles across to be seen. And yes, so maybe they came that time, maybe they came that way, but that's not how they would act, because they don't get that advanced by making those kinds of mistakes. So I don't know. That's just me. You know, that's just
let's
me.
hope if some aliens decide to do a flyby, we catch it.
Yeah, but I don't think we'd actually see anything of any substantial size. I think that it might be a very small object, you know, and that's just because by necessity it probably would be.
Right.
You know, but that's okay. I mean, I still think it's you know, it's very cool. I think it's exciting. I love I love your stream. I've been on it with you for how many times now? Probably
a good dozen, probably.
That's it. Holy cow.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do right now. We've been on for about an hour or so we're going to take a short break so I can refill beverages and whatnot, and everybody can
release some beverages.
We can release some beverages, and then we'll be back, and then we're going to talk about more direct moon stuff.
I'm so scared.
Yeah. You can enlighten us.
Enlighten.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take it. It'll be, I don't know, maybe 2-3 minutes, maybe 5.
I'll be happy to endarken you.
So that's what we'll do in the meantime. Okay. So yeah, we'll be right back, guys. I'll pop on a little bit of music for, I don't know, a couple minutes, and then we'll be back on, and then we're going to really start digging into the moon stuff. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. So we'll be back very, very shortly.
Alrighty.
Hang tight. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to P&K Space Imaging live with Mark D'Antonio. Mark, you posed a question last night to the people that were here, and you want to say that question again, so the people that weren't here know what the question was.
Yeah, and this sort of goes with our on our Sky Through live stream on our quiz and question segment. We pose a question to the folks out in the listening world, and we pick an answer, and if there's 5 right answers, we pick one of the winning answers at random, and that person, will win that question. In the future, we're going to offer some swag.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to offer some swag at some point in the future. Right? That's not very far away, actually, because we're working on it now. Everything from T-shirts to bumper stickers to lunar craters, which we have to talk about. Our 3D printed craters.
Absolutely.
That both my stream and your stream are going to offer for folks, and there will be also prizes in some of these contests. So the question was, as we see on the moon right now, we're looking at a Maria, an area that Maria, of course, means sea, and it's not a sea. There's no water, but this is a dark area. It's an area of fresh lava. What's fresh? Well, it's only maybe a couple billion years old versus a couple billion and 1 years old. Okay, so it's actually an area that might have been heavily cratered, like the surrounding terrain, but lava infilled that area after large impacts. Now, this process we see on the moon, so we know that it happens, and so the near side of the moon has these Maria, a whole bunch of them. However, on the far side of the moon, we don't see any of them. So the question was, how come the far side of the moon doesn't have any Maria and the near side does? That was the question. So if people want to gel about that in the chat tonight, or if they want to throw in their 2 cents or add it in, join the chat and add why you think we have Maria on the near side of the moon, but not on the far side. Now, technically, there is one Maria on the far side. That is in the much smaller area, a basin called Mare Moscoviense. And Mare Moscoviense is a little tiny basin relative to the size of the far side. And there is a infilled area of darker lava in the center of it. And that's the only thing there is on that side. Other than that, we don't see it. And to add to this, the lowest spot on the moon, all right, that is, there's a mean radius of the moon, which is a certain radius. Okay, mm-hmm. The lowest spot on the moon is on the far side. Now, why isn't there a Maria even there on the lowest side, on the lowest point on the moon? So that's actually kind of a real puzzler. All right, so work on it and let us know in the chat what you think. I'd love to see what you think. I'd love to see what you come up with.
And are you going to give them the answer tonight?
Yeah, I'll give the answer later on tonight.
Sounds good. Man, that burrito was good. Anywho. So yeah, welcome back, everybody.
I'm seeing some solutions already that people are writing in the chat, so it's good. Keep it up.
Yep. See what we got.
We're not going to lose any of them. We're going to make sure we go back and look through them. Ted Bronson offered a few.
Yeah. Yep. I'm surprised our guy Tim from last night isn't around. I thought he would be one of the first ones here tonight. You never know, though. That moon is a silly, silly thing.
Yes. It's a silly, silly thing. So Peter, look out. Look out, Peter.
Do you think it was towed into orbit, like some people think?
No, and I don't think it's hollow, and I don't think that it's artificial. I think that it's actually quite natural.
But it is pretty big for a moon compared to its home planet.
But we don't know the nature of the early universe near the sun. We don't know how the inner solar system, came about in terms of the quantities of material that are actually there. We only have the finished product to look at and reverse engineer that.
But from what we observe, our moon is the biggest compared to its planet. You know, our moon is absolutely huge.
Well, it's just over 2,000 miles across, right? I mean, it's not that big.
But compared to its planet, once again.
Well, we're 8,000 miles, so yeah, okay, you might say, yeah. But again, the way the moon formed, which is, you know, the conjecture that you always hear about, you know, the latest theory, the theory that we've been running with for a long time, is that the moon is, you know, was born from the Earth. That is a large Mars-sized impactor hit, you know. So, but that's pretty cool, you know.
So what do you think, Mark? Do you think we're ever going to catch a live meteor impact?
It'd be great to see a live meteor impact. But, you know, the fact is, they probably happen fairly frequently, but we don't actually get a chance to see these live impacts because we're not looking.
Yeah.
Remember, we only have a 50-50 chance if we're looking during the nighttime. But if you go, and we'll do this in the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, you know, quick map sky tour that we do. When I show you the sky tour that goes through that LRO quick map, we're going to actually see some of the craters that were very fresh. And that's something that I think is important that we should.
Because it hasn't been caught very often, has it?
No, they haven't been caught very often, but there have been, believe it or not, there are moon watch systems out there, and there are some that actually recorded a bright spot that occurred. Now, why would it be a bright spot? Some people would say, well, maybe the asteroid or the meteor hits the moon, and it shoots a lot of dust up into the air, you know, not air, but into we call it not the atmosphere of the moon, but the exosphere of the moon, okay, the area around the moon. And the sunlight catches it. That's what people might say. But the fact is, we're seeing it at the moment of impact. So what you're actually seeing is the conversion of kinetic energy to heat and thermal energy, right? That is energy from motion, which could be 25, 30,000 miles an hour, right, or even more, impacting a hard lunar surface that's hard relative to the impactor, believe me. And the sudden impact, that all of that is converted to a very, very high frictional coefficient, which turns out to be an energy release that's massive, okay? And we see that as light, of course. And that's a lot of thermal energy that's instantaneous at that point in that impact. And, of course, on top of that, it's throwing up a bunch of molten material and non-molten material as well as it scours its little basin, you know, for its crater. You know, so we haven't seen anything of that nature occur directly, but we have seen the bright light of an impact. And then when the LRO went looking for the potential crater, it found it, and it was a fresh crater. And the crater actually had a you know, rays that came out, you know, bright white rays that were radiating away from it. So it's very, very interesting to see that. But it's a comparatively rare event, yeah.
Do you think that the future of space is in private companies?
Oh, you know I do. You know, I think that if once we put space travel into the hands of companies, that's when we're actually going to progress, because corporations will compete against each other for the resources on the moon. And you might say, oh, well, that's a crappy thing. That's a lousy thing. Look at the alternative, folks. The alternative is that we have a massive war here on the planet where we start to create new technology to beat the Russians, to do this or to do that. You know something? Or the Chinese, okay? That's not the appropriate way to go. Let capitalism take over. Let people say, I want to own Mare Tranquillitatis. And the only way I'm going to own it is if I develop technology to exploit its resources and use them for the betterment of humankind. So it's the lesser of two evils, frankly, because normally our technology is developed only through a war, or primarily through war. Right. And if we can do it through peacetime capitalism, okay, and yes, greed, I guess, then that's going to be better for us in the long run, because it's going to be that technology develop through that that's going to get us off this planet when the sun finally starts to exhaust its hydrogen, contract, start burning helium to, confusing helium into further components down the periodic table, and thus expand into a red giant at that point, where it's going to then swallow Mercury, Venus, and the Earth.
Well, the only problem I have with it is it's going to invite secrecy, even between companies, where of course they're not going to be releasing stuff to the public, and everybody accuses NASA of doing that now, which NASA is, they're just like any other corporation right now. They have their own problems. I don't think they could keep a secret even if they tried. But
no, they can't.
But when it comes down to privatized, you have, of course, once again, it's going to come down to profit, where you have companies keeping stuff to keep their profit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not, you invite a lot more secrecy. Now, hopefully not. Now, from what I've seen of Mr. Musk,
yeah, Elon Musk is probably not going to play the game that way.
Yeah, he seems to be one of those guys that is just about humanity and get us off this rock. And he's pretty much in a rush to do it. He has a Kennedy-esque, march towards space, if you will, with his endeavors. Yeah. And a lot of the stuff, I saw in an interview, is a lot of the stuff that he's talking about that he wants to do. Of course, this Hyperloop thing, which I have my doubts about right now, just because the science doesn't make sense.
I think Elon's motivations are typically a means to an end.
Yeah.
A Hyperloop technology is something that is, he wants to do here on Earth to actually show it as a proof of concept.
Right.
And once you have proof of concept, then you can take it anywhere else. Once you show it works, and it'll be usable elsewhere, like on the moon, okay, or in a Mars facility. Something that's related to a Hyperloop technology could be used there. And you can always point to the success here on Earth, because Earth is our playground, for this type of technology. Yeah. This is where we perfect things.
Are you worried about, say, claims, like countries trying to build borders, say, on the moon or even Mars, for that matter?
Yes and no. Yes, because I don't think that we're in the mindset that says that we have parts of the moon that are ours and theirs, and Mars, no, because I think that's sort of the way it goes wherever we go. I have often said the first people to actually colonize the moon will be real estate agents. Mm-hmm. Okay, and same thing with Mars. They're going to be there trying to sell you a piece of property. I'm okay with that, and the reason I'm okay with that is because the greater effect of that type of technology is that, the greater effect of that type of thrust is that we will get a greater technology that we can utilize, in all of humanity, and it'll be in the best interest of the companies to look at what the people of the Earth are doing with the technology, how many are involved, can it reach everybody? If it doesn't reach everybody, we got to make it reach everybody. And everyone's going to indirectly benefit from this.
But can you imagine, like, borders on the moon? Like, you can't land in this area because it's Russian-owned moon turf.
Right.
You know what I mean? Well, which I realize that, truthfully, the International Space Station was a good preamble to our space, because, we do have many different nations in there, working as one. Which I always said that we would never be able to go and explore space the way we want to unless we all came together as one. When we stopped this whole, Russia's going up, Now, yes, the space race was good, competition-wise, to get the ball rolling and get the money put in where we needed it.
Yeah.
But the fact that, once we get that we are dual planet, or say planet moon species, I do think that, say, on the moon, borders are not going to be a problem, because I think it's going to be a collaborative effort for humanity, not just individual countries.
I agree with that. I think we're going to handle the moon the same way we handle Antarctica.
Yeah.
Okay. It's going to be an international territory. And the reason it's going to be for many hundreds of years to come is because everyone is going to need everybody else once they're up there. Okay, we're going to need Russian technology. We're going to need Chinese technology. We're going to need Iranians to help us with this particular thing. And it's all going to be a consortium of groups of people from all different places on this planet, all working together to survive. Because if they don't, they won't survive. Right. You know, without that Iranians' water purification system that they developed because of the long droughts in the desert, you know, then that wouldn't work. You know, that wouldn't help the colony survive. It might not survive. Okay, with the Russian, you know, power technology that they're going to use to generate power, you know, we wouldn't be able to do that. We wouldn't be able to survive on there without the power that could provide. The Chinese, you know, solar cell technology that is, you know, far and away cheaper, but very, very efficient. You know, that particular technology is going to have to come from them, or else we're going to end up spending far more than we need to. But as a group, as a whole, it's going to end up being a fantastic, you know, a fantastic endeavor, and I think it's going to be, you know, a new era basically.
And humanity has proven in the past that when the great minds of everyone around the world, no matter where they're from, come together, stuff gets done very fast.
Yeah.
You know, when we had the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, I mean, that wasn't just American, you know, scientists trying to figure out how to clean that up. That was a world effort from scientists from around the world. You know, and fairly quickly, for the amount of damage that was done, it was fairly quickly, you know, they came up with a plan. You know, once again, XL Valdez, it was a whole other thing back in, what was that, the 90s. So, it seems like the two times that we come together, when there's a common goal and when there's tragedy. It seems like the one time that everybody sets everything aside. And I think what it's going to take is I think it's going to take basically somebody like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
It's taking one person with a goal, sharing that goal, allowing people to see and believe that it is possible, because, you know, he's on this trek towards the moon and Mars.
Yeah.
I think once he lands, you know, those first people, and everybody's going to realize that, man, this is possible, I think all of a sudden you're going to have just an influx of scientists from around the world coming together under the banner of SpaceX, because, once again, SpaceX doesn't deal with borders. You know, they pull anybody from anywhere. They're willing to go anywhere to see any kind of science, even new technologies that haven't been proven yet. They're willing to get those people, bring them in, and help those people work on the science that they're working on to help them get to the desired outcome. So I think that Elon Musk is a very, very important player in the decades to come.
Yeah, and you know, I'm certainly no expert on, you know, what each country that's involved will bring to the table. You know, people were basically, you know, like Arden in the chat is criticizing me for saying the Iranians and their water purification. Well, that's not a real thing. I'm making these things up to basically point out things. So, you know, don't go down a path saying this is, you know, taking it literally. I was actually making those as analogies. So, you know, that's all that was. So. Anybody
can do anything with back engineering. You know what I mean? So say Iranians do come up with a crazy water purification system. All we got to do is look at it. As soon as we look at it, they're able to back engineer and figure out how it's been done. You know what I mean? But the simple fact is it's the race to get there initially and get it to work, which is why the whole patent thing exists.
Every country in this planet steals from every other country.
Yep.
That's a fact. So, you know, you have to deal with it. Now, on top of everything else, you know, again, my expertise is in, you know, the moon and, you know, the nature of the moon and so forth, and astronomy world. Everything else, when it starts to go into down the political spectrum here, that's where I want to exit, because I'm not interested in that.
Right. Well, Dee makes she makes a point, and I'm not sure if I agree with her or not, because she says an alien invasion would make people pretty much come together. I'm trying to scroll back up so I can see it.
No, I saw your comment, Dee. I do have something to say about that.
So do I.
In the same way that when we were attacked on 9/11, and please in the chat, don't start going down. It was a false flag. It was a false flag. No, sorry, we were caught with our pants down. End of story. Now look, when it comes to like for instance 9/11, we were all on the same page. And that lasted for probably, no lie, about a month. Okay, we were all on the same page. And then as the fear and terror went away and subsided, then we started to migrate back into our old patterns. Now, in the case of an alien invasion, see, that is going to do the same thing to us, but it's going to do it for a longer period of time. Why? Because it's an alien invasion. They're not going away. We're not going to see no more buildings coming down. We're not going to see that kind of thing, but we are.
Wait, are we actually talking about an invasion, or are we talking about just aliens coming to us?
She said alien invasion.
Because I can see it going two ways. Because we have this area of this country called the Bible Belt. And
yes,
I can see that this area of the country would want to shoot this thing out of the sky.
Good point, Keith. That's true.
And then you have the peaceful side that would want to make contact. So you're going to have everybody on edge, and I'm just not sure that an actual visitation would benefit anything in the short term. Now, obviously, in the long term it would. But once again, and then you're talking about the whole consequence of flipping religion on its head.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean? And a lot of people say, well, religion, this world is becoming less and less religious every day, and that is true. But, once again, you have deeply religious people all over the world. And if you all of a sudden have these spaceships show up in orbit, and all of a sudden, guess what? We're not the only ones, and nothing was made in anybody's image, guess what happens? It totally flips Christianity, Catholicism, Islam. All that gets just scattered, and then you have people wanting to believe, and then you can start getting fights between the people that still believe in the word and are starting to come to the other side, and you got them starting to quarrel. It could be a big cluster.
Yeah, and let's talk about what might show up on this planet from extraterrestrial origin. Okay, what might show up here? Well, we look at the way the Earth, and this is what I was saying before. In order to understand exoplanets and the world of potential extraterrestrial life, you have to focus on how we came about. And there's a lot of people. There was a school of thought that basically people said, we happened by such an amazing circuitous path of incredible coincidences and things that just couldn't happen again. Okay, I get that that's a possibility, yes, right? But that's only one possibility. Let's be clear. We had 5 major extinction events on our planet, okay? Technically 3. 2 were times where the biodiversity kind of narrowed and there weren't a whole lot of diverse life forms on the planet. And then it got wider again, but they considered it an extinction, all right? Well, so let's say 3 major extinctions, 2 biodiversity failures, okay, on this planet. That shaped the evolution of whatever filled the place of those missing, those holes in the evolutionary record. Okay, those let's call them opportunities in the evolutionary record. And so when we talk about what might show up here, we have to temper it with the fact that what would happen had dinosaurs not been destroyed? Now, and people think that the Earth was impacted by an asteroid and dinosaurs all died. Well, that's not true, actually. Okay, a great many of them did. Okay, because of the food chain that got destroyed. But it took thousands of years for that to actually, manifest itself. Okay, when the asteroid hit, obviously the dinosaurs in that area were killed instantly. Okay, but it sent up a cloud into the stratosphere, which kind of went worldwide. We had dusty skies for a long time. That killed plankton. That killed off some forests. That stopped production of this. The insects died. Things that fed on the insects, things that fed on the plants. You know how it goes, the food chain all the way up. Right. Well, the biggest consumers at that time, of course, were the dinosaurs. They had the highest caloric intake requirements for food. When that started to dwindle, then they couldn't evolutionarily adapt to the new situation. That is to say, what is evolution? Evolution is an accidental switch, that gets thrown in one species, and if it turns out to be an adaptation that's positive, then it's great. If it's not an adaptation that's positive, then it becomes a dead end. That happens. That's what we see all throughout the evolutionary record. Okay, So it's all about this mutation and adaptation in evolution. And if dinosaurs didn't die, then what would have happened? Well, there were some theropods that seemed to be heading down a path where their brain, the crankcases in their heads were actually increasing in capacity. Theropods are meat eaters, right? So there were some that were actually getting what could be described as maybe more intelligent somehow, a little bit. Now, if that's the case, then maybe we would be intelligent reptiles right now, something like that. And that's a possibility. So maybe a reptilian type species would come here because they evolved from a stage where they had similar beings on that planet. And there are those that might say, well, why could you say there'd be dinosaurs on another planet? That's like only specific to the Earth. That's very true. We only have one model to look at, and that's the Earth. Why do I say this? So why do I say that they might be on other planets? The reason I say that is because the universe provides these templates. It provides a certain chemistry that's the same throughout the universe. Right. Okay? And that chemistry is that when a planet like Earth forms, we get carbon-based compounds that are delivered to this planet, okay, by the universe. Comets and meteorites, and then the Earth itself made amino acids. The Earth itself made complex hydrocarbons. The Earth itself and comets delivered water in a variety of ways, from steam that condensed out of an atmosphere. The atmosphere was a lot of carbon dioxide, and then magically, we had these little creatures called cyanobacteria, and these little guys were carbon dioxide gobblers. They ate all the carbon dioxide they could, and they pooped out oxygen. So you're breathing the waste product from bacteria, actually. So that said, this took billions of years to occur. So that's one thing you see the universe has in abundance is time. So, our planet's 4.3 billion years old, right? If you look at the age of our planet and the age of the universe at 13.8 billion years old, you see that it's existed for 9 billion years before we ever even came along. So what happened here on Earth could happen in a variety of different manners on many thousands, millions, billions of other systems long before the Earth and the Sun, in fact, was even formed in the universe. So I said, that's why I said back when I was in college, getting my degree in astronomy, actually, I said to my head of the department, I believe that we have a populated universe. And he looked at me and he goes, what are you talking about? I said, I believe that the universe is populated. Look at us. We are nothing special. And the universe provided this carbon template for our planet and carbon-based life. I think that is pretty cool, don't you think? And he looked at me over the top of his glasses and he said, Mr. D'Antonio, get back in the observatory and leave Captain Kirk to us. I've said that a few times before, I know. But it's true. The bottom line was we have spent so much time perfecting our science that we have ignored other possibilities. And science has become so closed in a sense in some ways. And that's for good reason, okay, that it's very strict and it requires evidence before and proof before it can actually say, yes, there's alien life out there. But I believe we'll get that. I have had experiences, other people have had experiences that indicate that's possible. I can't explain how certain things have happened to me in my life, certain experiences I had that made me even move out of my previous house. Something got shoved up into my sinus in one night after a culmination of 3 nights of terror. The third night, I had something shoved up my sinus, and I was awake for that, and I couldn't move. I couldn't hear myself breathing. My ears were shut off. My eyes were fixed. I couldn't move my eyes. It was scary as heck.
With as much stuff as you remember, it was probably a hard drive.
That's a funny comment.
Well, it should be.
Well,
I don't know how your brain holds so much information.
I just read way too much, I think. I believe in the old-fashioned, if you don't understand something, find a research paper and read about it. And then if you don't understand it, write the authors and ask them. For crying out loud, they're real people. They'll talk to you. They love talking about the stuff they write about.
Yeah.
When I, for instance, I wanted to use an image from the Gemini telescope. It was actually an image of the first stellar system of planets other than our solar system that was photographed, and it was photographed in direct light, that is, infrared, and it was taken by the Gemini telescope on Mauna Kea in Hawaii. So I contacted the people that were doing that project, and I talked to the director of the project in email. Asked him if I could use that photo, and he was more than happy to let me use the photo. And he kind of, asked if I could just provide a credit, to the Gemini Observatory, which I do, and I do even now. I said, absolutely. Gemini telescope, is miraculous. It's done some beautiful things. Why would I not want to give you guys credit? I think you're furthering our science tremendously.
Well, I'll tell you what. If there's one thing I'm pretty sure we can all agree on, and everybody in the chat can pretty much agree on, if aliens are going to come here and they're going to land, there is only one place to do it, above all others: Canada.
Amanda Curran will agree with you.
I mean, seriously. I mean, you can't pick a more peaceful country. You know what I mean?
I think that they would probably land in Antarctica, or should land in Antarctica, because now here's the other thing: they wouldn't know who controls our country, and I don't think we want to give them too much credit. If they are passive observers looking at us, they can make certain things understandable to themselves. They can understand, for instance, that we don't penetrate the oceans very deeply. Observations can show that. Observation can prove that. So if I was an alien race, I might choose to hide in the oceans, okay, for instance, all right? And that seems to be a place where they're hiding. When the Sun did that article on me, and they talked about my USO sighting that I had on the submarine as a guest for the Navy, and look, I'm just telling you what happened. If you don't want to believe it, that's fair. I'm okay with that. I don't believe it. But it's there. It happened. It's something that I can't explain. And
that's what I've always said about the UFO phenomena. Is just like if somebody told you, over the last 100 years, if 50,000 people told you that ketchup was red, or that ketchup was yellow, wouldn't you start to think, okay, maybe there's a chance that ketchup might be yellow, and I've been seeing things wrong this whole time? I mean, that many stories, that many people, I understand the whole thing with, the group mentality. Once one person does it, but this is, this stuff.
Groupthink,
you go back to the 1800s. There's reported UFO sightings.
Yeah,
and documented ones. So it's like you got this all, the last 100 and some odd years. There has to be something to it. There has to be.
I agree. And the thing that I can also say to this is that if they are here, as I suspect they are based on my experience, then I'm pretty sure that they're not going to spend time tooling around our skies in a way that our eyes, which can see the visual part of an electromagnetic spectrum. See, we compartmentalize the visual spectrum. Okay, we compartmentalize it. We say we see from this frequency to this frequency, and that out here is infrared, and out there is ultraviolet. Okay, well that's our construct. Okay, to an alien race, it just might be. The whole spectrum might be something that they understand as a whole. They may not compartmentalize it and break it up into divisions.
Right. Like, what if the Phoenix lights the lights were the only thing we could see, but the rest of it was in a color or a frequency that we couldn't. That we
exactly
can't,
so. Exactly so. And so maybe that's my point. Yeah. Maybe there are other manifestations of physical objects or dimensional objects that could show up differently, and that's something that we have to consider. And that's why I say that our eyes are really, they give us a continuous image of a very narrow range of frequencies in the overall electromagnetic spectrum. You can't see gamma rays, you can't see X-rays. Okay, I lied. Whenever I get an X-ray, like a dental X-ray, I feel them and I see them. I actually see little tiny lights in my vision. So there are effects that happen to me in particular. Don't ask me why, I don't know. but I can always tell when the dentist, turns on the X-ray machine, or when they do a CAT scan versus an MRI. CAT scan's radiation, MRI is not.
Must be that thing in your sinuses.
I don't know. Well, that was taken out,
okay.
and so forth. But we can only see through a narrow range, and that's what our eyes evolved to on this planet. But the eyes of an alien race, maybe they're around a different star. Maybe their star has a huge flux of ultraviolet radiation, or maybe there's none, and so they're sensitive to ultraviolet and other parts of the spectrum that we're not. Bees, for instance, see ultraviolet very obviously, and to them that's normal.
Yep.
Okay, what's normal for us doesn't have to be normal for them. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. You can run across people that need gamma radiation at all times. That's
correct. And they evolve with it, and it actually is something that for them is life-giving, not life-threatening.
Right.
And for us, it's life-threatening. And so I think that's all part and parcel to this concept. We can't negate much of anything. We can negate some things, but not everything. But like I said, the aliens that might arrive here don't have to look exactly like us, but I do believe they're going to have a certain thing. They're going to have probably 2 legs, 2 arms, a central head, and then something to see with, probably 2 eyes with binocular vision. Why do I say that? That sounds awfully human, doesn't it? Well, the reason I say that is because of the fact that if you look at our planet, and you look at all the life forms on this planet, okay? Mm-hmm. Every life form on this planet of any substantial development, a multicellular creature has symmetry, right? It has bilateral symmetry. And that's something that we didn't control. That's something that was controlled by the evolution, which is the mutation and adaptation of a creature. If that wasn't important, if that wasn't something that was sent by the universe as a template via the materials that showed up here to make the Earth, if that wasn't true, then we'd have pogo stick creatures, one-legged bouncy creatures, bing, bing. We'd have some creatures that, like in the African savanna, that would navigate using sonar. Bats use sonar, but they also have eyes. They can see visually during the day, but they can use sonar as a assist. Dolphins use sonar. Sharks use electricity. Sharks use electricity. Okay, electrical currents in the water to navigate and to sense prey. So, there's different things. There's subtle assists by all these other forces that are available, but primarily, we are a symmetric set of life forms on this planet. So that means it's a template provided by the universe, right? Now, I don't mean template as in some kind of, big mystical thing. I simply mean it's a template based on the chemical makeup of the universe, based on the way atoms are symmetric, with the way the DNA unravels and unravels through RNA and transfer RNA, if you want to go out down those paths, okay? Because of that, we are this symmetric species, as well as the animals. So I don't doubt that the first visitors here from, another world, another place, might also be symmetric and have that type of bilateral symmetry as well, because it's here in every single life form on this planet that's advanced. Yeah, think about it.
Isn't there an equal chance that it is something completely different that we don't recognize as like something normal to us?
It's possible. Like
maybe there is a pogo people out there somewhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, I pogo people. That's good. Yeah. Hi there, boing, 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 boing. Well,
right.
Yeah, there could be, but I mean, there could be. I mean, I'm not negating or denying or saying that nothing is impossible. There isn't.
I like Billy Meyer's idea. Big 7-foot tall blonde chicks.
That were on the Dean Martin show. Yes, yeah. I get them.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
But something tells me it's not going to be anything near that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just, I wish there was like you ever feel the need a rush for proof?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You're just like, come on, just give me that one little thing, and You know, we've done this now for 2 years, and we've caught stuff. You know, some stuff we can explain, other stuff, you know, we identify.
Yeah.
And it just, you kind of get frustrated. But then again, once again, like I said, every time we do the stream, we see something new with the lunar surface. So,
yeah,
you know, you never know.
You know, that's right. And like when I do my stream, one of the things I notice is that many times I get things flying through the stream that are really cool. I at least once a night, I typically get a satellite whipping through the view, because I'm using a fairly high power view a lot of times, and I'll get a satellite whipping through, which looks so cool. And now it's recorded for all posterity. You can go back and watch it again and again and again. Right. You know, very nice. And I like how, you know, this whole stream concept. And I blame you and Paul and Bill New York Skywatcher for me doing this, because you're the guys that convinced me to do it.
Well, yeah.
You know, it's your fault.
Why not?
Yeah, and you got a Jupiter 2 because of it.
Yeah, I do.
You want to explain that to everybody?
I was gonna say, with that, yeah, that Jupiter 2 is awesome, by the way. But when it comes down to, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Like we had, like last, okay, I'll take care of one thing first. On last night's video, there was a comment about satellites, and I want to just put this out there for people that are, you know, because everybody says, well, there's so many satellites in orbit that we should be seeing them all the time crossing the moon. Okay, this is basically what that comment said. And this guy pulled a number, you can tell, completely out of his butt, because he's like, there's 30,000 satellites in orbit, which, of course, there's not. There's 2,700 plus right around that area.
Well, those are the ones that are active. There's actually, if you add them up, there's actually literally several 100,000 objects. But many of them are small and would never be visible going in front of the moon. They probably do, but they're small. But go ahead.
Right. So I need to make this point to the people that are saying that we should be seeing satellites all the time. And once again, I've said this many times before, but you can go outside right now, for the people that, you know, it's dark out for, and you can go look at the moon through a normal drinking straw with room to spare. That's how small of an area we're looking at in space. And for the amount of satellites, you just won't see it. I mean, do we catch them? Yes, but they're not going to be flying by all the time. And most of the stuff that's not intentional satellites, like satellites we've put up there, whether it be space junk or whatever, is too small. It's just getting flooded out by the light of the moon.
Yeah, and you know what? Add to that one last thing, and that is, take that drinking straw, and while still looking through it, go find any star.
Yeah.
Go find a bright star. And when you finally give up because you can't seem to find a bright star, you take away the straw and say, look at all the stars. How come I can't find a single one? It's because you're looking at such a small area. You just haven't hit the right location yet. And that's how it is with a satellite. You know, you're not going to see a satellite potentially climbing over the moon like this unless it's first of all, it's got to be coinciding with where the moon is, and the moon's half a degree. You know, it's 30 arc minutes across. You know, so it's actually not really big, and it's big in the sky, but it's not big compared to the overall volume of space that has satellites in it. And satellites are on very specific paths. Many of them are very far out. The ones that we might see crossing in front of the moon are potentially the kind that are in relatively low orbits, that are east-west orbiting satellites or north-south polar orbiters. And it'd be easier to see the east-west ones because those have a bigger chance of crossing in front of the moon than the north-south ones.
Right.
But you might actually also see a geosynchronous satellite.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a video of saying a UFO coming out of a crater, and it shows this thing slowly moving. All right. Well, what I think they were looking at was a geosynchronous satellite that was between us and the moon that they happened to catch. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they were watching that, and because of the moon drifting, in its orbit, moving in its orbit or in orbit, they could be following the moon, and the moon was stationary in their view. Okay, but the telescope is slowly turning and tracking the moon, which is moving, toward the east, all right, a little bit at a time. And if it's doing that, maybe they saw a geosynchronous satellite. And so what happened? The thing would drift, okay? It would show this thing drifting to the right, all right? Yeah. And that's exactly what it was doing. It was, the object looked like it was drifting to the right. You think that it was the motion of the object that you were looking at, but it was actually the motion of the moon moving through space, moving through space in its orbit. So you see, there are so many things that require example. You got to draw pictures. You got to make examples. You got to show people how it works. Yeah. That's what I'm all about. I don't when I try to explain a UFO sighting, and I've determined that it's something that's ordinary. I don't just say no, that's just a flash went off in a dark room or a dark area outside and illuminated some dust. I don't just say it. I recreate it.
Amen.
So
and on that note, we have reached the 8 o'clock hour. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to get in to the fun now.
I thought this was fun. This wasn't the fun?
Oh, we get into the fun stuff now. When we're going to dive into the moon hoax conspiracies.
Oh, goody.
And lunar bases.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to talk about Coca-Cola bottles on the moon at all?
No.
Okay.
But we had this conversation last night off air, and we were talking about this, and I was telling you the story about I was talking to Amy Title. And I was asking her what she thought about some
wait. Whoa. Tell them who Amy Title is.
Well, Amy Title, you guys know she's from the channel Vintage Space here on YouTube, and she's done the program that Mark was on, which was Aliens on the Moon, I believe. She was one of the people for that. But she is, like, her knowledge on the Apollo missions, like, she is an Apollo expert. Like, like anything you need to know about any of the Apollo missions, and I'm talking anything, she knows it. That's what she is. Good. She's considered a space historian.
Yep.
So, and she also, represents NASA on levels, through TV and whatnot. So we were having this conversation, because we're getting her here on a guest once our schedules line up. She's going to come on with us, and I just quickly asked her about these moon hoax conspiracies, like what she thought about them, and she said, "Listen," she said, "forget the flag, forget all these people saying the moon was filmed through a window." Making it look further away than it actually was. She said, there is one piece of evidence that cannot be debunked by any moon hoax believer. And she said, the answer lies in the rooster tails. And I asked her what she meant by that. And she said, on the rover, when they were up driving around the moon's surface, look at the rooster tails coming off the rover wheels. She said, which is the
dust being kicked up in the back as it's traveling.
She said, that cannot happen on Earth anywhere.
Not even in slow motion.
Not even in slow motion.
And and I can explain what she means by that because
I will let you.
You can. Well, I was going to say you probably can too because
nope, you'll do it 10 times better. Go ahead.
I don't know. Certainly 10 times longer. I'm just kidding. I talk too much. I realize that. Well, what she meant by that, by the rooster tails, is something that I have been saying as well. When I debunk or tell people that the moon hoax, is a silly conspiracy, I talk about these rooster tails from the lunar rovers. Now, as they were driving along, the rear tires would kick up stuff into the exosphere, up into the area above the moon. The rooster tails create this trajectory that the particles flung off the wheels create this trajectory. They get flung way up into the air, and then they fall down. But the way they fall is a very regular, predictable, calculable, methodology. You can actually calculate how high they may go and how far it may fall from the rover as it's going, and it makes this particular shape. That shape won't exist on the Earth, and the reason is because we have 6 times the gravity as the moon, and so if you try to recreate that same rooster tail on the Earth, you can't do it. You end up with a much lower. Rooster tail. That's because as these particles get flung off on the moon, they go up, basically, if you think of it this way, 6 times higher than the similar particle would here on the Earth. That's something that you cannot fake unless you use CG. And now you have to basically say that they did it not only in CG, but on film.
Yeah.
Right? And did it that way in the 60s when there wasn't even a personal computer then. And you say, well, the military had this advanced equipment back then. Yeah, you know what the advanced equipment was? Right? The advanced equipment was something equivalent to an old television that had tubes in it. Now, the tube was the transistor back then. Okay? On, it was a 1. Off, it was a 0. Okay? Lots and lots of tubes. Zeros and ones. Okay?
But here's the funny part. They actually did have somebody do the math, you know, of these tails coming off there.
Yep.
And when the math was done, the guy said, well, whatever it is, it has to be about 1/6 of the gravity of what we have here on Earth, because that's the only way that kind of arcing and landing is possible.
That's right. The path could only be accomplished, that arcing path could only be accomplished in a lower gravity than the Earth. And it turns out it was 1/6 of the Earth. Yeah.
Or Falcon says, or film it in a vacuum. That is a giant vacuum stage if you're filming the rover driving around.
No, it wouldn't matter. If they filmed it in a vacuum, it wouldn't make a difference.
Wouldn't matter because
gravity operates on objects in a vacuum the same way it operates on objects in the air.
Exactly.
You know, the only thing that's different, see, that's the thing. Galileo, you know, that test attributed to Galileo where he dropped them from Pisa, the Tower of Pisa. He dropped, 2 different size things, and they hit at the same time. That showed that even in the air, depending if it's a big thing and it has some mass, they're both going to hit at the same time. That's because gravity operates on objects the same way across the spectrum. It's operating on a feather the same way it acts on a rock. But the thing that slows the feather down is atmospheric resistance, right? The resistance of the air. And that doesn't exist on the moon. So when that experiment was done on the moon, and I forget the astronaut that dropped it, he dropped a hammer and a feather. And they both hit the moon at the same time. And the astronaut said, well, what do you think of that? Mr. Galileo was right.
Yeah.
Okay. And he showed that experiment. That's another thing that couldn't have been done unless they did it entirely in a vacuum. But it'd have to be a full vacuum. You know, they couldn't have done it in a partial vacuum because the feather would lag.
Yep.
You know. So, unfortunately, there's way too many holes in these hoax theories. But, you know, sometimes it's fun to engage because I like watching the hardcore believers, you know, get so riled up, their faces turn beet red, and they start to drool and spit as they get all excited. It's just funny watching these. It's so funny watching them.
You see all these big all caps titles on YouTube. It's like, 100% proof that we didn't or we never went to the moon.
Yeah, I think those are the funniest ones.
And it's like you look at these and you go, okay. And the first thing, of course, they always bring up is the flag, which they pretty much accepted by now. Most people don't even mention it anymore. And then they go on this big thing about shadows. And yes, shadows do go different directions, and they don't realize the reason why is because you have different elevations in the ground below you that are causing the shadows to go different directions. It's the simplest scientific stuff that, and once again, who was the guy that said, just because you don't understand the science isn't evidence against it?
That's right, because science doesn't care what you believe.
Right.
Okay. And, for that terrain issue with the shadows, I actually, I did that. I think it was season 1 of NASA's Unexplained Files, actually, or maybe 2. I built a moon set here in my special effects studio. And I went up to Doug Trumbull's studio, and I borrowed a large 1K spotlight. That just means, the watt is 1,000 watt. And it was basically a focused spotlight, a single light that was going to be the sun. And I put it on the far side of my studio, and I aimed it at the narrow, or the low angle. It was a low angle elevation, about 10 degrees, basically aiming at my moon, which had craters, astronauts, even a lunar module that was extremely accurate, okay? Mm-hmm. And it was a forced perspective set, and when you looked at it down low, the shadows were all going the wrong way because as they enter a crater, they tilt to the left. As they come up, they tilt to the right. So if the train is undulating, the shadows from the same angle and height that the astronauts are look like they're going all the wrong way. And then you take that same camera, don't change the shot, don't do anything, raise the camera up in the air, aiming down at the set the whole time. As you get to the top, all those shadows are parallel. Yeah. All right, when you're looking down on top of it. That way, the undulations of the terrain are removed. You don't see that. All right, and there you go. Now you bring it back down to the 10-degree mark where it comes back down, so it's low elevation again. And guess what? They're all going the wrong way again. So are you really creating shadows going the wrong way? Are you manipulating light in some weird and pesky way? Yep. Well, the answer is no, you're not. You're showing how you can remove the undulating terrain from the process. And when you don't have that in the process, by going straight down on top of the set, then you see that the shadows are all parallel.
And Falcon,
end of story.
Falcon brings up another point about the Van Allen belts. And just let me say, the Van Allen belts were actually no big deal. They calculated it right. You're going through fast. I mean, everybody that's on this hook about Van Allen belts doesn't understand the science behind it. And
that's right.
I'll let you explain the Van Allen belts too, because once again, you know all the big scientific-y words that I don't.
Oh, come on. No, it's actually very simple. The Van Allen belts are the manifestation of what happens when charged particles from the sun are getting trapped in our magnetic field. The Van Allen belts are the magnetic field of the Earth exposed by these charged particles that get trapped in the magnetic field. And so the radiation, as you know, the magnetic field of the Earth dives down into the poles at both ends of this planet. Okay, and so
check out the letter T in the crater. Just sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's a perfect letter T in the shadow of that crater.
Actually, I see a capital Greek gamma, or the letter R to the upper left.
Oh, okay.
Of the crater. See that it's a small R. Okay. See, that's pareidolia.
Yeah.
Making a pattern, a meaningful pattern out of an unmeaningful one.
Right.
So when we look at this now and we check this out, we see that wait a minute, hold on. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I was looking at something. I missed something. What were we just talking about? Thanks, man.
Van Allen.
Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah. When the Van Allen belts, take this solar particles that get trapped in them. Okay, they dive into the poles, like I said, and they circulate around the poles. The magnetic fields, because they dive into the poles, electric charges from the sun, when they hit the Earth, they go into the Van Allen belt. They're charged. They've charged the Van Allen belt. The Van Allen belt can actually change its shape. Sometimes there's more than one zone in more than one belt, actually more than two belts that form in the Van Allen radiation belts. And it depends how powerful the solar radiation is. And at the poles, it's minimal. That's where the auroras are. And what you're seeing charged particles from the sun that are spiraling around the North Pole and South Pole of the Earth. And the interaction with the upper atmospheric molecules are causing this illumination, this glow. And it's atoms absorbing energy and giving off the energy spontaneously in specific wavelengths that typically are green and red, okay, nitrogen and oxygen. And so this process of going to space has to be carefully planned. There's no doubt that we don't want to go through the full brunt of the Van Allen radiation belts, okay? And so what they do is they go out when they leave the Earth's, they hit the escape velocity for the Earth. They actually go out kind of through the poles, and they're in the Van Allen belts for only a few hours. Right. And this works. This works very
certain times too. There's certain times better than others.
Right. They have to go at a time when the solar radiation is minimal. But I think that the key here is that became a myth because someone just made it sound authoritatively like you cannot go through the radiation belts. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And then that became a thing. And then suddenly that's a thing. And say, well, no, it shouldn't be a thing. Okay? Because there's no reason why we can't go through the belts. We have.
Yeah, we should actually address Inkheart's nice conspiracy theories going on in chat. Well, he said that there should be tracks or something. There are. Go to the LRO site. You can see the landing sites of all the Apollo missions, and the stuff that's still there. You can't see with this one. We don't have the resolution. No telescope on Earth has the resolution.
Not even the Hubble. Not even the Hubble. I wrote an article about that because I also write articles for the Huffington Post. I did that. I proved it.
The LRO does, and of course the JAXA mission from our friends over in Japan also. Now, if you don't think that one of these countries would love to blow the whistle on us faking a moon landing, you are sorely mistaken. Because
That's right.
if that was the case, there would still be a race going on to get there.
Yep,
Now,
right.
for the second thing that he said about we can't go the other day, that is absolutely wrong. We could if you want to pay for it. The sad part is NASA's budget has been cut completely down, where we're basically at 1/10 in today's dollars of what the funding was back in the 60s.
Right, and
So,
that's very true.
NASA's whole thing has been there, done that, and when Nixon cut it, he wanted to concentrate more on learning more about space by orbit stuff. Being what came out of one first thing was Daedalus, and then there was a second until eventually they got to the ISS after that. But we could go to if you would go and hand NASA $30 billion tomorrow. Yeah, it might take more than that.
This is why I said that privatizing space is going to be more beneficial in the long term, because
exactly,
if we don't have a goal to beat Russia, for instance, which is a Cold War type thing, right?
Yep.
Which is dangerous. You don't want to play like that, because
who also have plans of going back to the moon very soon.
Yes, that's why I mentioned Russia. But
Japan,
the thing is,
Russia, the Indian Space Agency has plans.
China landed safely on the moon with their rover, so
and took pictures on
by
their
the
way
way,
by of the Apollo missions.
And you can see the Chinese lander on the moon with the LRO. You can actually see it.
Yep.
I can zoom in and show you exactly where the Chinese lander is, and you can see the tracks it left, and you can see the base from which it came, and you can see the lander itself. I mean,
let me just put it this
now,
way. Anything,
they're very small.
Yeah, anything that you guys come up with to say that the moon thing was a hoax, I can pretty much guarantee you that we have an answer for, because it's been, scientists have tackled all these before, and they have said and they have debunked all these conspiracies. The hardest part is the people don't want to listen. Once again, your lack of knowledge of how science works is not evidence against it.
That's right.
Okay, so I mean,
that's right.
The countries would have blown the lid off this thing back in the 70s already. If we
any enemies to the United States would have been more than happy to blow the lid off.
I mean, China was tracking with telescopes and all this stuff, tracking the Apollo missions, and they weren't even a big space power at the time. They were monitoring radio communications, and all the, there's ways to tell all this stuff, anything that you can come up with, and you guys can label whatever you want to in the chat and ask us about. We do have, roughly another half hour yet, so if you want to try to put something in there that might, either stump, well, it's kind of easy to stump me, but if you want to try to stump Mark on, these, as the moon landings were a hoax, feel free. We'll give you the answer scientifically.
Yeah, I mean,
why it's not possible.
I don't have all the answers for sure, of course. I don't say I am the answer man. I don't do that at all. What I am saying though is what I do know and what I do talk about is stuff that has been scientifically shown to be accurate.
Right.
And if you say that you don't believe the science, what you're really saying is you don't believe the hundreds of researchers that independently came to this conclusion via their own individual research. All right?
Hundreds.
That's like saying, exactly. And that's the kind of thing that, like when you say the moon landings were a hoax, guess what? You're insulting every single person that worked in the Apollo program. You're insulting the memories of the astronauts that died in the Apollo 1 fire. You're, on the pad. You're insulting all the people that gave their lives and all their energy and just lived, eat, and slept the human lunar landing program.
When we first started this channel, I had a lady try to tell me that the Challenger explosion was fake.
Great.
And that just irked the crap out of me.
Yeah, that's see, you know what that is? That's ignorance.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry, and so I'm not trying to insult anybody. Nobody, you guys all, most of you, many of you, the folks listening don't all know me, but I try to be fair and balanced with everybody. I really am. I do. I try to be a voice of reason. If you have a reasonable thought about why you believe the lunar landing, for instance, was hoaxed, I will entertain it. I will listen to you. But you also have to be prepared for the science you're going to get up your butt in return. All right? I will do my best to explain it to you using science. But I'm not going to, again, I don't just say words that can't be shown. Okay? I show you. I don't just say it. I show you. Like, for instance, someone wrote, prove, I think this was was a Falcon that said this? Prove we landed on the moon. Show me. Well, if I had, if I was on Keith's stream in a manner that I could do it, if I could just take over the stream for a little while, I would. I would take it to the LRO quick map, and I would zoom in on every single Apollo landing site, showing you the tracks of the rovers, the descent stage that's left on the moon. I'd show you all that. I'd show you Surveyor Crater on Apollo 12, and I'd show you the tracks leading around the crater to where they went down to touch the Surveyor. I'd show you all those things. And it's like, okay.
But once again, this is easily accessible by anybody just by going to the LRO site.
That's right. But you know what? Then they'll say, well, the LRO data is fake.
Yeah,
okay.
It's fake. It's
at what level do you stop saying things are fake? It's like somebody was trying to tell me, Sandy Hook, the tragedy where those children and some of the teachers were killed here in Connecticut by lone gunmen. Okay. There's people that say Sandy Hook never happened. It was a false flag. Really? Well, some of the state troopers that were on the scene from the major crimes unit were my friends, and it changed them for life. That was the worst day of their lives. Okay, so I taught at that school. Actually, I taught at that school where that tragedy happened. I was a special lecturer. I would go in from time to time, and who knows? Maybe I shook hands with one of the teachers that ended up dying. I don't know, but the fact is, okay. You can't tell the parents of those children whose bedrooms are empty now and whose closets still have their pressed clothes in them, never to be worn again. You can't tell that family that their child wasn't really killed.
Right.
And there's people saying that they can. It's like, no, these are the armchair idiots that are
don't
somewhere
get me
else.
Wrong. Listen, there's definitely conspiracies going on in this country, but when you're faced with facts, sometimes you just gotta accept it.
Yeah, no, I said to one guy, I think today, when he said, that if he had the power, he'd exhume the bodies of these children. And it's like, oh, okay, you exhume the bodies of the children. And so if 3 out of 3 of the graves had a child's body in it, is that where you'd stop? Or would you exhume all of them? And then what would you do? Then you would then demand a DNA test of the children to make sure they're the actual children. Then you'd have DNA tests of those parents to make sure they're actually the children's parents. And then if that wasn't enough, you'd invent a conspiracy as to why they grabbed bodies, why the authorities who perpetrated this put bodies of other children and fake the DNA results.
Yeah.
You see, conspiracy theorists never end. They never end their thought process. They always just find another way to believe they've been lied to.
Which is why it's called the rabbit hole.
That's right.
Once you're in, you just keep digging yourself deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, I let them dig down as deep as they want. I give them the answer, and I just throw up my hand and say, okay, that's the answer. You don't like it, go take your paranoia somewhere else and your deliriums, elsewhere, because you ain't going to get another audience here. And that's it.
Yeah.
You got to know when to shut them off and turn them away. And, and that's, something, everyone deserves an explanation if they don't understand something. If they don't understand something about the moon, or if they don't understand the science, that's different than coming up with a ridiculous conspiracy because you don't know the science, okay? There's people I watch in the chat. They ask very intelligent questions because they don't know the science.
Right.
Well, those are the people that I want to cater to immediately. I want them to understand, let me help you figure out what's going on there. Let me tell you this, and by the way, don't take my word for it. Here's how this all works. And here's a website you can go to prove it. So it's all about outreach for me. I want to make sure people understand. Yeah. That's what SkyTour Livestream is all about. That's why I do that in SkyTour Livestream. I want people to understand, the deep sky, the universe you can't see.
And guys, we live in the information age. I mean, anything you could ever want to learn about or know is at your fingertips.
That's right.
And I don't know if that's, our friend Dave, was saying,
Schmidt?
he was Dave Greg.
Well,
was,
okay. Well,
was
hi,
saying,
Dave Schmidt. Anyway,
he was saying, basically he doesn't know if it's a good thing because once again, you can always find something. Yes, you can find out scientific stuff and facts, but there's also the same amount of people that started, there's so they find 2 websites that say the moon is hollow, and they use that as proof that what they thought was right, just because there's 2 other websites. So I mean, it's a give and take, you know, then the best thing you could ever do is just do experiment yourself.
That's right.
And find out.
I insist on that. I always tell people that that's a great idea. I never tell people that's a bad idea. I think it's a wonderful idea.
I'm trying to figure out what Falcon's talking about here. By bashing their intelligence and timing out those you asked to talk about it. I'm not sure what he's talking about. I mean, maybe I missed something. Did he get timed out for something?
Yeah, I think he probably got timed out for something, perhaps.
Oh, okay. Well, it looks like he's a little mad right now and throwing a hissy fit for some reason. But, yeah, if you think you have a reason why, you know, you think the moon landing was a hoax, feel free to ask us. You know, we'll try to give you the best answer we can.
Yeah, exactly.
But
that's right.
No reason to throw a hissy fit about it.
Well,
I think Mick Stiffy says he needs some sex. Oh, he says, well, we need some sex, Mark. Damn, I didn't know that.
Wow, that went to 18 plus very quickly.
Yeah, look at that. And you can take it from a guy named McDougal McStiffy.
I'd rather not take it. Thank you very much.
Oh, my. Yeah. Hey, you know what? It's YouTube. That's how it goes.
It is, no doubt.
You know, people get, yeah, let's talk about this, and all of a sudden they get to cursing and stuff like that, and then they realize when they get time out, and then they get all mad like we're trying to censor them, like, oh, you're taking away my freedom of speech.
No, actually, we're just trying to keep the chat, you know, on track. That's
well, once
all.
again, I don't know what he was timed out for, but somebody timed him out, and I guess he got his panties in a bunch, and you know. But anyway, so yeah, once again, I know I'm a believer that the moon trips happened.
Me too.
And I was surprised. Actually, somebody told me that Mr. Secure Team over there was actually a believer that they actually happened now, even after all those years that he was in there saying the moon was hoax, and now he's coming out saying, no, I believe we went. You know.
Well,
so yeah, there's hope. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, some people can be turned. I'll tell you this. Okay, the folks that do Secure Team, when the Sun did that article on me about the USOs, they ended up, you know, Secure Team asked me to do an interview with them, which I have not done, because I'm not in control of that, you know.
Right.
And that's because who knows how that could get cut up. Proof boy. So,
Trump makes a point there.
But I do say this. You know, what happened was he did a video about that, and yeah, he added some stuff to it. Nothing that wasn't what I said, but he added a couple of extra little pictures and things without, you know, just to be window dressing, basically. Yeah. But I'll say this. I expected him to take it to a different place than he did. He actually stayed right on task. He didn't actually go off to Never Neverland with it like they usually do. So I think you're right. People can change.
You know, well, you know what? We have to give credit where credit is due. You know, we thought
That's
that
right.
was going to go a different direction, and he actually stuck to the, you know, the words of it. Didn't embellish anything. So, you know, give credit where credit is due. Now, I thought all last year, because Tyler was doing a good job last year. Like, he was pretty much sticking to the facts, letting people like watch his video. He was coming, but then I don't know, he just started going down that path again where I don't know if views went down, and everybody talks about this YouTube adpocalypse where everybody was losing money, so I'm guessing that had something to do with it, and then the whole clickbait started again. By the way, if you guys didn't notice, I totally clickbaited this stream, if you didn't know. I wanted me and Mark were talking about it yesterday, and I wanted to see if I put up a picture of a crater with an arrow pointing at it for no apparent reason whatsoever, and as you see, the title of the video is Best View of the Moon from Earth with a question mark, just to see what would happen. And you see now 175 people, you know, and it just goes to show you that clickbait does work. So I'm just gonna keep going.
Are you suggesting
random pictures of arrows pointing at stuff on the moon? Just, you know.
Are you suggesting that you clickbaited everybody that's watching?
I did. I admit it. But, you know, I just went on, like, because I've had people tell me this is the best view of the moon from Earth, so I put a question mark on the end of it.
Yeah, you just dropped to 169, by the way, so several people said, oh, yeah, or 168, and see, it's going to keep going.
Darn.
You know, that's on 167. See, this is what you get.
But
it
just goes to show you, I mean,
play games.
That's what a lot of the UFO channels do, you know what I mean?
That's true.
It's a
they do.
image, and it has some arrows and a red circle on it somewhere, and, you know, and that's what gets you. You know, but
that's right.
Once again, you know, it comes down to common sense. So, but hey, you know, pretty much. Listen, guys, you can believe whatever you want to believe. That is absolutely fine. But if you come in spouting it like it's gospel, like it's truth, be prepared to be challenged with it. That's all.
Yeah,
from a scientific side, that's all.
I think that's important too. You know, you have to understand that. For me anyway, and you too, I know Keith as well. Keith doesn't say anything he doesn't know. He basically says only the things he does know, right? And I say the things that I know from my scientific background, as anyone else does in this world. So I think it's important that people see that we're trying to put our best foot forward, trying to put the best science forward. And we want to, I'd love to give everybody a moon rock. I think it'd be so great.
Right.
But instead of a moon rock, we've come up with something else, which is maybe a good time to mention this, is we actually have craters that we have making, and we're taking them from the actual geological survey data and from the satellites, LRO, and so forth. And we're actually printing craters from the moon, Mars, the asteroid Ceres, Vesta, Pluto, even from New Horizons. I have all the data from these probes, and I have what's called the digital terrain models, and I take those and I play with them in these other products to actually generate something that I can print on the 3D printer. And lo and behold, I have these gorgeous 4-inch by 4-inch, they could be a lot bigger, a lot smaller, 4-inch by 4-inch plates that we settled on as a good size. And these are little moon plates, like your favorite crater on a moon plate, and it's in 3D. You can run your fingers over it, and it's marked where north and south, east and west is, so you can actually hold it in the light. And as you raise it up to the light or change the angle, you can see how the light will fall inside the crater. And it's actually very close to what it really looks like. I mean, it's just beautiful. You can see the effects. Like a central peak in a crater can actually create this artifact that people say is a giant gun, or it was an artificial thing. Well, I can make it myself, and it's actually a peak at the crater.
Pythagoras is known as the giant gun crater.
Yeah. Well, these craters are going to be offered on SkyTour livestream, and Keith is going to offer them on P&K Space Imaging. And today is tomorrow is Cyber Monday, and I think we're going to launch tomorrow. But we have a site ready to go, and now you might say, well, what craters can you get? Well, the answer is any crater, because if you have a special crater you like, we can print it. We can make it if we don't have it already. I've printed probably 100 different craters now. I have 20 that are just sitting around right in front of me. They're just like, various states of, finish. But they're beautiful, and they're all painted precise. They're very precisely painted. Like for Tycho, in a 4-inch by 4-inch format, Tycho is about an inch across. And in that format, you can actually see the rays coming out of Tycho, and they're in the proper color. And as I told Keith, and he knows, but the moon is not gray everywhere. The moon is actually different shades of gray and also browns. And we use, sometimes up to 5, 6, 8 colors to paint these plates to make them look realistic. And they're done very precisely. I've got really, really high-end artists that I've brought on board, and they're actually in Colorado at my other FX Models location. And they're doing all that work, as well. I paint all the masters here, and I send them to them, and they reproduce them faithfully, doing such a great job. So the other thing is, on our website, on our stream, when we actually produce our little quiz and question segment, one of the things that we can do, and will do, actually, is have these very difficult questions that you can answer in astronomy, and it might take you some research or whatever. And if we get like 5 correct answers, then we're going to choose one of the winners at random, and that winner will get one of these craters, all right, as a gift. And we have a standard and deluxe version. The standard version is just a crater, the square crater, and from the edge you can actually see the profiles of craters that are like half on the plate and half off, that they're not quite fully on the plate, and that's just the way that section of terrain turned out. Other craters, the deluxe version, it's the crater on its plate is mounted on a wooden plaque, and below it is a brass plate with the latitude, longitude, name, and diameter of the feature that we're looking at. Makes a great gift, you know, and I know people are looking forward to them. There's a lot of people that are asking me about them now, and I'm pretty sure that you know, once they're out there, they're going to start going to stores. They're going to start going to websites. So I'm offering them to the streams right now, at my stream and Keith's and Build New York Skywatcher, because, you know, we want to be the first to offer them. You know, get in early when you can get it sooner, because it's going to be the type of thing where once it starts going, we're going to probably be way behind, you know.
And if I may make some suggestions, the
please.
Aristarchus crater, definitely a good one to get. Clavius,
Yep.
Pythagoras, Tycho, Jackson.
Are you able to show any of them on your screen at all?
Not at this time. No, I'm running too much stuff already. But
No
one thing I
worries.
do want to do is I want to get Grepple in chat has a thing for you. He says, or she says, I'm not sure if it's a he or she, but combustion engines do not operate in the vacuum of space. Debunk, please. It's impossible to use that type of engine in space.
Well, actually, the actual combustion is taking place in a chamber full of fuel. Okay, and some of that fuel is oxygen. And if you recall, oxygen is in our atmosphere. Okay, so it's providing it with that rarefied atmosphere to burn. And what's coming out of the back end is just exhaust. But that exhaust is imparting an impulsive force to the rocket. That is, you know, there's a force being pushed on the rocket in the opposite direction of that outward flow. Because that's the only opening. You're just seeing the result. And yes, out in space, that's why the flame doesn't continue. It stops very quickly after the density of the burned chemicals and burning chemicals, the exhaust products, starts to get thinner and thinner, and it gets to a certain point where there's nothing left. All right, and that's because the engine is actually you know, providing its fuel. That's why we have big rocket tanks, because they're holding a little bit of, you know, the special gases required to burn in a combustion chamber on a rocket. Don't forget, the rocket is started up in the atmosphere, okay, and in space, when it does the secondary stages, okay, those chambers are carefully segregated from the vacuum of space, all right, so that they will ignite. And then once the rocket starts burning, all right, and Bart starts burning that fuel, it's endless until they shut it off or throttle it or do whatever they do.
All right. It says show me a video of that process. I don't know if there is a video of that process. I'm pretty sure there is somewhere, but escapes me. But I'm pretty sure with a quick search you could probably find a video of it somewhere, or testing,
I'm sure
or scientists talking about it.
Yeah, I'm sure R.A. Greppy is just, you know, he's asking questions that, you know, if he doesn't understand, or she doesn't understand, then that's fine. You know, but if he's saying he doesn't believe rockets can burn in space or work in space, then he better have a really good argument, because we've been doing it for a really good long time.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's one of the first things they had to figure out.
Yeah,
you know.
Yep.
Propulsion.
Yeah,
let's see.
And David Schmidt says something very appropriate too. You know, it's like, yeah, no one here has to show you anything, R.A. I mean, that's true. You see, the thing is, that's the lazy approach that you're taking. You're demanding that we show you something. It's like, well, no. Why don't you demand of yourself to look up something and find out the truth? You know, why do you ask other people to show you what you're looking to see? I mean, do it yourself. That's what we all do. Yeah. We do it, so it's good enough for us. It's good enough for you.
And Buckman Austin asks, looking for a scope, guys, mostly for planetary and solar. Is the Nexstar S5 SE... Oh, shoot, chat just went up on me. Let me go back up here, just like that. There we go. There it is. Hey, come back here. There we go. Is the Nexstar 5 SE good enough, or should I jump to the Nexstar 6 SE? Also looking at an Orion 127 MAK. Well, if you're looking just for planetary and local objects, 5 is definitely way good enough.
More than enough.
Yeah, way more than enough. You want to jump to even 5. I mean, even 5's even good for deep space objects if you want to look at, nebula and stuff like that.
Bright ones.
Yeah, the 6 compared to the 5, it'll just give you, more resolution and more light collecting. So
a little more light gathering power.
Yeah, you would see a little better resolution on any deep space objects you look at. But if you're talking about local, like Moon and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and whatnot, the 5 is plenty good enough.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that's very true.
I'm just trying to get back now. Let me try to get live. The YouTube stream is like going so slow because I got so much stuff running. Let's see. I'm building my own spaceship. Well, good luck. Maybe you can join that flat earther guy that's going to launch himself into a cloud or something.
No, he canceled. He canceled. He's not doing it.
Well, I thought he said he was doing it on like Tuesday or something now because he couldn't do it Saturday.
Oh, yeah. The Bureau of Land Management told him he couldn't do it. Oh, so I guess maybe he worked out the permits.
Let me guess. There's a big conspiracy. They don't want me to launch. They don't want me to know.
I don't know about that, but you know what? He says the article said he's gonna go up 1,800 feet.
Well, what's that gonna show?
Nothing. It's not gonna show anything because you got to go to about 70 miles
to
start to see it.
Like 80,000 feet is usually the bottom line for seeing the curvature.
Yeah, and even then, you pretty much, I suspect that you've got to really get yourself up a lot higher. I think about 70 miles is about where you can see it.
Why would you launch yourself 1,800 feet? Like, what is that gonna? Like, what's it gonna do besides almost kill you?
Well, I said in the story on this that was on like one of the websites, I think CBS site or something. I commented and I said that if he's self-taught rocketry, as he said, he's a self-taught rocket maker. I said, if you self-taught your rocketry with the same dedication and diligence that you self-taught yourself science about the universe, I'll be looking forward to seeing your obituary.
Yeah, only a flat earther would try to launch himself high enough to see the flat Earth in a steam-powered rocket.
Yeah, and steam power. Yeah, it's a steampunk rocket is what I call it. Yeah, and he doesn't call it an atmosphere. He calls it an atmosflat.
Man, I hope he's okay. Like, I hope he doesn't die or anything by doing it. But didn't he try this before and it blew up or something like that? Like, I don't wish ill will on anybody. Like, good luck to him, But you're launching yourself on like a freaking soda machine, for only. It just doesn't make sense. It's like
that's funny.
1,800 feet. It's like, why bother?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can get up on taller mountains than that.
You can go get 20 helium balloons and tie a camera and send it up 1,800 feet.
Well, actually,
with some fishing line.
A single weather balloon with a GoPro can go up, to 120,000.
Yeah,
no problem.
I just don't get it. Like, I don't does it say in the articles anywhere what the point is of 1,800 feet?
Yeah.
What?
It doesn't. I don't see, but I think that he's trying to show that he's trying to prove it's flat. Well, you know what? You will. If you go up 1,800 feet, it's gonna be flat.
Absolutely.
So he's actually just generating his own proof by not allowing himself to go to any altitude that would endanger that theory.
That's just, I don't know. It just seems weird to me.
Yeah, it is weird.
Well, I'm looking here. Okay, he's going to go up 1,800 feet, right? The Empire State Building is 1,454 feet to the top.
Yeah.
So he's going to go up, another 350 feet higher than Empire. Like, you could do that with the Sears Tower. Like, I just don't get it. Like, why not set a heftier goal and wait a little bit? Say, I'm going to launch myself to, 10,000 feet. Okay, that's a little bit. At least you're above all the buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to just say to Eric Allen in the chat there, he says, is there spaceships on the moon? Yeah, there are spacecraft on the moon, but they're ours so far that we know of.
So far.
There's descent stages from our lunar landers. There's surveyor spacecraft. There's impacts from Rangers. There's the discarded third stages for all the lunar missions that are on there. And those craters are seen with the debris in the craters on the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter quick map. I mean, you can actually see this destroyed rocket stage that had made a crater on the moon. It's just so cool.
You know what?
Really neat
I wonder, Wouldn't it be easier just to go up in a plane and parachute out?
Yeah, but all he has to do is get in a jet plane and he can get up to 30,000. Okay, so
I'm sorry, I'm still on this subject, but I'm fascinated.
Yeah, but make sure you tell the other guy what telescope is the best for him. You didn't actually
for
really
starting out. The one I always recommend is one of two. It's the Celestron 114 or the 130 SLT, are my two favorite home scopes that are portable, that have great optics. They're inexpensive, and that leaves you some money left over where you can get like a nice lens kit with it.
Or a Barlow,
from 4mm up to 32mm. So. Those are the ones I always recommend. They're not go-to scopes, not computerized, but they're if you want to just look at the moon up close, they are great scopes.
Yep. Right. I mean, how much are those? Are they like 400 to 500 or 300 to 500?
No, when they first came out, they were like $249. I think now you can get them for like $189. It's like a 4-inch tube.
Okay, now for the go-to versions of those, I believe you can actually get one for about $400. Maybe.
The 130 SLT might be not a go-to, but a computerized one. Like it might be not dual axis, but single axis tracking. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at it. I mean, I have the 114 here. I don't have the SLT, but I have looked through the SLT, the 130 SLT.
Yep.
And it's beautiful optics, the same as the 114. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of spoiled. I have a 10-inch here in the dome, and I go outside, I turn it on, it gets its GPS location, and off we go. But it's But
listen, wouldn't it be less dangerous to climb like Mount Everest instead of launching yourself in a rocket 1,800 feet? Like, wouldn't it just climb up? You'd be way higher. You could see a lot of stuff. Like, I just don't get it. Why is this bugging me so much? Like 1,800 feet, that's nothing. Like, why risk your life to go 1,800 feet to prove absolutely nothing?
Well, I saw in an article it said 1,800 feet. So, looking at the size of his rocket, I don't believe they could get him to probably 18,000 feet. Okay, so I didn't think it was a typo. I really think that a steam-powered rocket. Think about it, steam-powered rocket.
Yeah.
He's a self-taught rocket manufacturer. I mean, his rocket might go like those ones we used to pump up with air and shoot off with water.
Yeah.
And we just go dunk, and it just comes shoot.
Like Nerf has a better rocket idea to get higher than 1,800 feet.
Well, I know.
Plus, it's all metal, and it's like you're launching a steam train 1,800 feet in the air.
Yeah.
Without any guarantee that you're gonna survive it. I mean, maybe he just has bigger kahunas than I do. I just don't understand the point of it.
Well, his kahunas might be bigger, but his gray matter is probably well reduced because, as I said, if he taught himself rocket science with the same fervor and tenacity that he taught himself, science,
right?
Then he's a dead man.
The guy with the scope says in the chat he was looking to spend up to $2,000, but that sounds good. If you're looking to spend up to $2,000 and you can afford it, definitely go with the 6 or 8, Celestron. They're great.
Schmidt-Cassegrain.
Yeah, and you can get a bigger Meade. Personal opinion, I don't think they're as good as Celestron, but Mark's a Meade.
All right, watch Celestrons. It now.
So yeah, I mean,
I've had both.
Yeah,
I've had both.
So yeah, if you're willing to spend that much, yeah, go with an 8-inch. That'll be perfect. Then you'll be able to view whatever you want to, or you can even go with a 9 like you've seen on the screen. The 9-inch. So yeah, you never know. But man, that's just amazing. 1,800 feet. Get out of
here. and now.
But like I thought I remember people
Keith
saying
is on.
They donated to like this guy doing this. And it's like, okay, well, what if he does this and he crashes and he dies? Like, you contributed to this guy's death by telling him this would be a good idea.
And that's why they did it. They're just very interested in seeing a Darwin Award recipient.
Oh, you think they're trolling him?
I do. I think they're doing this.
Give this guy $100 and let's see if he's dumb enough to try to launch himself.
Yeah, he's gonna crash right into the ground, man. Let's do that. Or he's gonna pull his parachute and then realize he never made a parachute big enough for his body weight.
That can't be right. They wouldn't give him that much money. I know they didn't give him a lot. It was like because he did some radio or show or something, and he ended up with like I don't know, like 3,000 or something like that. But still, That wouldn't be right. I don't think people would
Yeah.
do that. But then again, we do have internet culture, so you never know. It just boggles the mind. It's like epic facepalm.
By the way, Dave Schmidt did a nice he was doing a nice plug for me for the SkyTour live stream, and he basically says you can do a question for P&K here in the chat. Also try SkyStream Live Tour. It's SkyTour live stream. Yes, and Dave, you're probably a little tired. I know if you're over in Thailand still teaching, then you probably had a long day or having a long day because it's probably daytime for you right now, I believe.
Okay.
But that's okay. I appreciate the effort. I was amused by that, but thank you so much.
And I'll tell you what, I'm going to start a GoFundMe campaign tomorrow where I am going to launch myself to prove
to the kitchen
to prove the Earth is round in a rocket ship that runs off of Diet Coke and Mentos.
With a big enough tank and a big enough system, you probably still couldn't do it.
Ah, jeez. Poor people. Man, oh man. Well, once again, I hope the guy's okay, and I really, truthfully, I just hope he just doesn't go through with it, just for his own well-being. But he seems pretty determined from the interviews I've seen with him.
Yeah. Oh, Tron Man asked a question about that asteroid. I want to answer for him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tron Man writes, what does Mark have to say about the asteroid that's coming through the solar system that more than one scientist says could possibly be a spaceship? Okay, the first part of that was right. The second part of that was not. Okay, more than one scientist has not said it could be a spaceship, but more than one UFO nut, okay, like I can also be, has said it could possibly be a spaceship. I'll say this. I saw this, and I looked at the story with great interest, and I studied the asteroid that's coming through, gone through, actually. The thing came through at over 85,000 miles an hour. It's an interstellar interloper, and we know that because of the fact that we see this asteroid that is so very vastly different from any other that we found. Could it actually be a spacecraft traveling and tooling around? Well, there is a chance, yes. But if it was an advanced species capable of controlling a large asteroid, then I would suspect they would have a better way to get around than just going 85,000 miles an hour. Because we can go 85,000 miles an hour if we do some gravity whips. All right, we've gone up a few tens of thousands of miles an hour to get to Pluto from here. Mm-hmm. So yes, I mean that's possible that it could be that, but why? To what end? It doesn't make sense to only have a spacecraft traveling 85,000 miles an hour. So, but I do have a few things to say. It is really a very cool asteroid because it's like a cigar, and it's sort of a spindly shape, and so it was probably made in another solar system. Now, it came to us from the direction that Vega is currently at, but keep in mind that it didn't come from Vega because where this thing came from, if you project back 30,000 years along the path it came from, Vega was nowhere near this thing, all right? Right. So it's not like it just happens to be Vega happens to be just sympathetically in the same location that it's coming from right now. And based on the angle at which it's coming into the solar system, that's how they know it's interstellar, because it's traveling on a path that is not orbital, that is, it's not trapped by our sun's gravity, and it's moving on through. So it's nothing that came from the Oort cloud or the Kuiper belt. It's something that came from far beyond. That's how they're looking at it right now. Certainly, it's exciting, and certainly, we don't know a whole lot about its composition yet or anything about this. It'd be great if we could just go out and grab it and, put it into orbit around the Earth. Right. It'd be kind of fun, but we don't have that technology yet. And it's going to be very hard to slow down a massive, yeah, exactly, a massive asteroid that's moving at such speeds. But I just think it's a very interesting story. I like it. I'm as excited about that as I was about Tabby Star. I'm still excited about Tabby Star, which is something that we actually look at in Sky Tour live stream. We actually go to Tabby Star and I show people Tabby Stars. Hey, look, this is the star that all the fuss is about right here. You're looking at it.
Absolutely.
Really cool stuff.
And once again, I think that is where we are going to wrap for the night. And I just want to end on this one thing. If you happen to have kids right now that are, say, 8, 10, 12 years old, encourage them to go into the sciences because they are what they are calling the Mars generation.
That's right.
All right. And they're the ones that are going to make all the stuff that we talk about and speculate now. They're the ones that possibly have that in their head floating around and are going to be able to figure out the problems that we can't currently figure out. So
That's
I would
right.
definitely encourage scientific stuff on any kids. And, it's the United States is lacking when it comes to science. Most of our scientists are coming from different countries that are more of a science-based policy, like Germany and Sweden and whatnot. So it'd be nice to steer our youth more towards science and get them interested in this kind of thing, because once again, if we want to be the leaders of the future, we're going to need the minds.
That's right. And you know what? I'm committed to that too. In fact, to the point where I basically put my money where my mouth is in this one. I have a guy that did some help for me, a contractor, works very, very hard, and he has a son that's around 8 years old, actually. And his son is interested in astronomy. So next time he comes over, I've asked him to come over. I'm going to present him with an 8-inch Dobsonian telescope that I've had here that I wasn't using, and I wanted to give it to his son so that his son can now have a telescope of his own that he can explore the heavens with. And this guy has done so much for me. When I was in the hospital having surgery, he was here helping, rebuild a front porch that was, extensive, a big, big front deck on my house. And he came up here, did the stairs over, and he just did that. And what did he want in return? Nothing. Well, he's going to get something. He's going to get something in return. He's going to get something for his son. Absolutely, you gotta cherish people like that, and you gotta reward people like that, especially when they don't think it's coming. That's the best part.
Absolutely. And once again, Mark, I'd like to thank you for joining me tonight.
D, you're funny. Oh, not my kids. D, I love you. You're a sweetheart. Thank you. That's great.
Thanks for joining me once again and answering
Had a great
time. Everybody,
great time.
Be sure to check out the Sky Tour live stream with Mark D'Antonio here on YouTube. I'm pretty sure people will post up the links in the chat, and the link is in the description down below if you want to check that out. I'm not sure what your weather's looking like out by right now. If it got cloudy like it was supposed to.
It's cloudy tonight. It's cloudy tonight, or I would have been streaming while on the show with you. I would have been streaming on mine.
There you go.
And I would have actually simulcast it, but I'm not. And I want to thank you guys. I want to thank everybody in the chat for coming along, and those who are watching tonight here on P&K. And I'm very happy to see how the science takes off, and people are genuinely interested in this science. They're genuinely interested in the Earth and what's happening. Now, there's if I could just add one more thing before you close up.
Go for it.
The science is in its infancy, okay, for this, but scientists are finding out. The science is now in actually the Earth is actually running low on oxygen. Okay, the oxygen level on this planet is dropping. Now, what could be causing that? All right, that's a quiz question for you. And on the next stream, we'll talk about what could be causing it and how we can fix it.
And we'll either be on this one or Mark's, depending on which one goes first.
That's right.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are like having a hard time breathing right now, you're going to want that answer right away, I'm sure. But it's not really. We're in no danger for millions of years, by the way, just so you know. But it has to do with the way oxygen and it works in an atmosphere, and what's producing the oxygen and how it's being consumed. There's an answer somewhere in there that can tell you why we're probably running a little bit low. Mm-hmm. So just want to let you know. But that's a good quiz question. We'll cover that on the Sky Tour live stream, and we'll also probably talk about it some more here.
Absolutely. And once again, thanks for anybody that joined us and was watching tonight. And we will be back, being that it's clear. We'll be back tomorrow night and the night after that and the night after that. And the streams is just going to get longer and longer and longer and longer.
And so, Paul's going to get crazier and crazier and crazier.
Yeah, he's already going crazy with the cross marks there. He must be looking for something. I'll let the stream run for another 2 or 3 minutes yet after we're done here off the air. And well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Check out Sky Tour live stream. And once again, more information coming on those craters if you want any. We'll be sure to get you some. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. And thanks for having me on with you, man, Keith. I loved it. It was fun.
Yeah. And I guess that's our cue to exit. So
exit. Stage right.
So everybody have a good night, and we will talk to you tomorrow, hopefully. Take it easy, guys.
See you later.